And funny enough, we're going to be opening the phone lines because it's a little while since I've had a chance to speak to people. So I feel as if I need the
They
lead.
have to talk. You can't just talk at them.
Yes, I'm well aware.
Oh, right. Very good. Very good.
Wow. I'm taking lessons from you on that.
Oh,
unbelievable!
Touche. James, I hope you have a brilliant show. Thank you ever so much for your company. I'm off to have haggis. Of course, it's Burns night tonight. It's lovely. It's lovely. I shall be back tomorrow. You lucky things. I'll be back from 6. I hope you can join me then. James Max is next. Good morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And a very good morning to you. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. It's Saturday, the 25th of January. I'm going to be with you until 1 o'clock. All sorts of things coming up. Very shortly, I'm going to be joined live in the studio by Peter Barnes, the political strategist. We're going to be looking through the big top stories of the day. Also, we're going to be turning our attention to the cars. The cars of the United Kingdom. Absolutely extraordinary. We'll be taking our look at the UK's worst car. You'll find out what that is later on in the programme. Also, how can the Trump administration bring an end to the war in Ukraine? We'll be talking about that, finding out about the aftermath of Storm Eowyn, and indeed talking about the Prime Minister ruling out whole life sentences. And we'll be asking, why are we selective when it comes to treating children like children? But first, one has to turn our attention to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves. She says Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. What vacuous mumbo-jumbo. She's done everything she can to kill her country, kill the economy, and kill everything she touches. So, Rachel Reeves, what needs to be done? We'll be asking that. You can give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. So, very good morning to you. It's good to be back here on Talk, and it's good to have your company. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this Saturday morning. And indeed, my thanks to political strategist Peter Barnes, who joins me. Good morning.
Good morning, James. How are you doing?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Good.
Yes, delighted to be back in the hot
It's
seat.
lovely, isn't it?
Yes. Very exciting. I have opened the phone lines because
Yes.
I am perplexed by this story. So, in the Times, we have Reeves. Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. Now, I know...
Sorry.
I know.
Well, you can't really help it. It's somewhat of an involuntary reaction when you hear complete nonsense.
Well, I do find it extraordinary. So Britain must learn from President Trump's positivity and be more optimistic if it is to revive the animal spirits and turn the economy round, according to Rachel Reeves. Now, she is, of course, the Chancellor.
For now.
For now. Inside the papers, it says, "We've got our best days ahead of us, and I know what needs to be done." Now, I take the view that Rachel Reeves doesn't know what needs to be done and has done everything possible to make every single mistake that you could possibly make. That first of all, she's turned to use a technical term, Keynesian economics, which is basically tax and spend. Never works, never did,
Nope.
except in absolutely exceptional circumstances when private capital is not available. When private capital is available, use it. Governments are there to facilitate. Governments are there to channel. Governments are there to legislate. And also, it's not their money. It's not your money, as in yours and mine, when you come to look at rich people or otherwise. It's other people's money, and you have to persuade them that they should give it to you in order for you to do the job that central government needs to do. She's confused that with thinking that she and her team are the, I don't know, the wheels of economic growth. Now, if you're talking about infrastructure, OK, that can help. But other than that, I don't see that there's anything that she can do. So I'm asking you to tell Rachel Reeves this morning what needs to be done. I'll give you my thoughts, but I'd like to hear yours. 0344 499 1000. If you run a business, if you work for one of the businesses, for example, we've seen the story, Peter, that Sainsbury's and Morrison's and all the supermarkets are saying we're going to cut jobs. And we're going to cut jobs because of Rachel Reeves' changes to national insurance. We need to maintain our profit margins. We're going to become more efficient. We're going to make changes. We're going to fire people, which for anybody losing your job is a horrendous place to be. Presumably, when she made the U-turn on non-DOMs, she should start to think about other U-turns. What do you think Rachel Reeves should be doing?
Well, first of all, she should probably pack up her office and leave. I think that would be the first best thing that she could do for the country.
OK, I understand that's a headline grabber, but...
No, but in all seriousness, I do genuinely believe that, because I think that she is actually one of the main obstacles, because of the exact thing you've just explained, is that she has fundamentally confused the role of government. She thinks it is the government's job to drive all of this stuff. Government needs to get out of the way. This is the big argument that we always have, is what is the role of the government when it comes to the economy? And for me, it is always about it should clear the path and let private
Blair
enterprise
started it, Brown continued it, and every Tory leader also proliferated this view that the Westminster bubble and blob needs to be in charge and control, forgetting the role that Thatcher, I think, really spelled out clearly, which is it's your money.
Yeah.
And when she said it's your money, it's our job as government to spend it wisely. And it's our job to do the things that business and people and enterprise cannot do. And that means providing centralised education services for those who want them, but not taxing those who don't want them. Same with private health. If you want to have private health, be my guest, make your choice. It's the government's job to make the NHS as good as it can be, and actually to use private firms and private money and investment, as best as it can, because this strange view that this wonderfully owned, religion of the NHS can do absolutely everything. No, it can't.
No, it can't. And this is the thing: is that these people have been continually lying to themselves, and they've started to like drink their own Kool-Aid. And this is the problem. We're now wrapped up in. I think you've used the term like religion correctly. Is that they are these kind of acolytes. That they must always preach the beauty of the NHS, preach the beauty of the state, and how wonderful it is. When you look at it in reality, in the cold, harsh light of day, that. It isn't brilliant. It is crumbling. It is broken. And I've always said that if you want to save the NHS, save the BBC, save all these great public institutions, they must be first saved from their friends before they are saved from their enemies, because their friends are the ones that are killing it. The people like Starmer and Rachel Reeves and most of the Labour Party now, really, realistically, are part of this kind of upper middle class kind of way of looking at the world. And it's about a metropolitan view. And we're starting to see the real divide.
I don't have a problem with a metropolitan view, because I think you need to have different views depending on where you are. If you are living in a village, you want to have a village view. If you're living in the countryside, you want a countryside view. If you're living in an urban environment, you want an urban or metropolitan view. But also you have to recognise that other people have different ways of life that need to be respected. And also, there are things that you don't understand in your realm. So, as somebody who was brought up in a city, there are lots of things about the countryside I genuinely don't understand. But I have to respect those who live in that environment, that they know best when it comes to how to run a farm, how family businesses and families engage and different people engage in farming that give us our food. And there are plenty of problems with our supply chains and systems and the way that supermarkets are behaved and all that stuff. But also, we as consumers, I think, need to act more responsibly when it comes to making our choices. And I think politicians need to understand that, for example, if you are an entrepreneur, you take risk.
Yeah.
Risk has a price, because you could lose all your money. You could lose all your investment if it goes wrong. You require people to take risk, and with risk comes reward, sometimes very big reward. And stop being the green-eyed monster. If somebody goes and does well, what is it in our country? If somebody does well, they're brilliant at what they do. Let them have it, let them keep it, let them enjoy it. You know, by all means, you've got your debt to society, a responsibility. I've always paid my tax. I have a responsibility. There are things that I would like the state to do that I can't do or I don't want to do. And for a society to work, you have to recognise that people need help in different ways. Fine, I get it. But when it starts to get over a certain point and you become disincentivized, what's the point in going out to work if you end up paying 70% pretty much in what you earn in tax? It's just like, well, I might as well sit on my rear end.
Exactly. And, you know, I find it interesting that Rachel Reeves actually said that the benefit system had a perverse number of incentives. You know, the language has really shifted from Rachel Reeves and from the Treasury in general. You know,
well, I think maybe the pen is dropping.
It might seem to be, because, you know, she's talking about like the dropping of net zero over the putting
Quite
economic growth.
Look, by all means, if something is better. So, I've always been in favour of change. I don't know whether you agree, Peter, but, for example, if wind farms or alternative energies or solar or whatever, if all of those things are great, fine. Develop them, do them, make them available, allow us, the consumer, to choose where we get our energy. And if they can compete against the oil and gas and all these other things, fine. But you're forcing us to pay high energy prices because you're taking away stuff where it doesn't matter a scrap of difference what we do compared to what America does, what China does, what India does, what all these other nations do. And by the way, we've allowed political fools to wreck the technologies that we developed, that we pioneered, and should have put us ahead. And we allowed them for 20, 30, 40 years to destroy, for example, the nuclear industry.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. The fact that Britain could have been leading the Green Revolution, I mean really leading it in terms of its technological changes, and the fact that we let that go with such embarrassment really is appalling. But I think the way that I look at it is that Britain and successive governments have always chosen stick over carrot, and in terms of getting the public to do something. And that is the real issue for me is that instead of incentivizing the public to do something, it is we have to beat you into doing it, and then whenever there is any opposition to it, you are labelled as something
now,
other.
stick
and,
and carrot.
Stick and carrot, yes, definitely.
But carrot should always go first.
Yes, definitely.
Always.
And what's more important is that with these technologies, particularly in the green area, they are kind of lying to themselves and lying to the public about how successful they really are, how far down the line we are with this stuff. You know, and when we look at wind farms, for example, we're still paying for them to turn. You know, it's a rather ridiculous.
But also
situation.
the amount of energy, and I do recognise that. Say, for example, if you burn coal, you burn gas. If you believe some of the nonsense that they say. Yeah, I get that as you burn those fuels, you're adding to carbon, and I understand that you're front loading when you're doing the wind farm. It's kind of once it's manufactured and up, and then you have this sort of longer term benefit, if you like. But they only work in certain circumstances, and they're only part of the solution. I've been an electric car driver for the last 15 years, not because I care about the environment particularly, but because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
And they're now making it more and more expensive to buy and to look after and to fill up electric cars. As soon as that financial incentive goes, I'm off.
Yeah,
I much
definitely.
prefer petrol cars.
Yeah,
They're lovely.
Yeah.
With the smell of petrol. Now, Peter, we could talk all morning, but we mustn't because I've been asking the question. Rachel Reeves, she says she knows what needs to be done. I don't think she does, and I think you probably know better. So I'm asking you to tell Rachel Reeves what needs to be done. What needs to be done to achieve this dose of Trump positivity? 0344 499 1000. That's the telephone number. Lenny is in Ashford. Lenny, good morning.
Good morning, James.
Have you missed me?
I have, James. Yes, I must say, truthfully, I have.
Yeah, you almost sound convincing. Anyway, what can you tell us this morning?
Well, I think that the problem with our country, we've got two ministers that do not know what they're doing, and that is
just two.
Reeves.
I thought we had. I thought we had a whole cabinet, Lenny, and a whole parliamentary party.
Well, I totally agree with you there, but there is two that are doing an awful lot of damage.
Yes.
And that is Reeves and Rayner.
Oh, Rayner.
Yes, and they both need to sit down with someone of experience who lives in reality in the real world and put a policy together that encourages growth. Because their policies at the moment, both of them, are killing growth in our country.
And I think that's really important, which is when you want to encourage growth, what you're really saying is you want entrepreneurs, people with ideas, people who are prepared to work hard, to either work harder, which is when, for example, they gave out those pay rises to doctors and nurses and train drivers and all of that, which I actually support the pay rises per se, but I would have asked for something in return. I would have said, we've got to change the way you work. We've got to make it more efficient. We've got to make it a better job, a better prospect, and better for the country. That things have changed. The way we operate is changing. We can't have an NHS that operates on a 9-to-5 basis. If you're ill, you're ill. You can be ill in the middle of the night. You can be ill during the weekend. We have to have a 7-day-a-week service. It's not, here we are on Talk. People are, here all the time because people have to be here all the time. It's a 7-day-a-week business.
It is, and that is just common sense, James. And
why is it that common sense is lacking? Do you think from either Reeves or Rayner or Starmer?
Well, I think with politicians, their biggest enemy is their ego. And I think, I look at Starmer, and his priority is Starmer. It isn't the country. It isn't the people of our country. His priority is Starmer. And if it furthers his career and puts him up front, that is all he is interested in.
Let me just take that for a second, Lenny, because if that was true, surely what Keir Starmer would want to do is to be popular. And if you look at the polls today, which put Reform first, the Conservatives second, and Labour in third place, then he clearly isn't even brushing his own ego. So there must be something else that's driving it. And I wonder whether it's this... They're so ideologically driven. and they're so keen on taking things away from people who have stuff and equaling out this whole socialist mantra, as opposed to, no, different people do different things. Surely that's part of the problem.
It's all down to votes, James. If you look at the raping gangs, they are the Muslim vote. And Starmer will not upset the Muslim vote for anything, because without the Muslim vote, Labour would not be where they are.
Well, I think there are a lot of people in that community, and indeed others, who are fed up with Labour and what they're saying. But there we go. Lenny, we must leave it there, but thank you for starting our calls this morning. We will take more calls from you over the course of the programme, and indeed, if you want to get in touch, if you want to tell Rachel Reeves what she needs to do, give me a call now. It's 0344 499 1000. We take more of your calls and some more stories from Peter Barnes. That's coming up here on Talk.
I've been asked earlier today not to mention his name, and I'm not going to, because I think that's good. I think that's quite right. Why would we give him the honour of naming him? And in fact, you know what? You put a picture up of him. Let's get rid of that. Let's not even put his picture anymore in front of the people. It's a horrible picture. He looks demented. He looks deranged. I think it's better if we don't even see that picture anymore. You know, let's consign him to the dustbin of history, and let's hope we never hear from him or his representatives ever again.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
23 minutes past 10 o'clock is the time this Saturday morning. It's me, James Max, with you until 1. When I'm asking you about Rachel Reeves, she says we've got the best days ahead of us and I know what needs to be done. I could get myself taken off air by responding to that, but instead of doing that, I'm opening the phone lines. I'm asking you what you would like to tell Rachel Reeves. I'd like you to tell me what she needs to do, because I don't think she knows what needs to be done. I don't think she's making the right choices, and I don't think she's giving the right messages. Now, on the front page of today's Times newspaper, it says, Reeves, Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. Then they got a double-page spread on the Saturday interview. The Chancellor thinks it's time for Britain to quit the slow lane and learn something from Donald Trump. Well, what she could learn first thing from Donald Trump is Donald Trump says something and then he does it. She says something and then she does something entirely and completely different. So she says she wants growth and then she does everything possible to take money away from you. What was the first thing she did? Winter fuel allowance. By all means, take away the winter fuel allowance and taxpayers. Nobody would object to that. But take it away from people who genuinely need it. What a daft thing to do. And unpleasant and cruel. And then she says, I want to grow business. And then she increases the cost of business. And then she says, I want to put money into services and to improve social care and to charitable activities. Well, I'm a trustee of a number of charities, and I can tell you that her measures are adding tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds to costs. So what are we doing? We're looking at how many people we employ. We're looking at how on earth we balance the books. We're looking at how we make things ends meet. You know, for charities that are doing desperate and urgent work up and down the country. And then she says, oh, you know, I'm incentivising. No, you're not. You're saying if you do well, I'm going to tax you more. And if you're wealthy, by the way, ideologically, it doesn't even raise any more money. So people with more money, and I'm sorry to say this, but if you've got a lot of cash, you can do what you like. And you're going to take your cash somewhere else if somebody says, I want more than you think is fair. Now, you might say that that's selfish or otherwise. Fine, it might be. But tax is about a balance. And tax is about kind of what you can get away with, but also understanding what your remit is. Anyway, I've had a rant. I'm asking you what you would tell Rachel Reeves what needs to be done. 0344 499 1000. Now, a lot of messages coming in on the socials. Thank you for that. 87222 to send a text. Start your text with the word talk at talkTV, or you can always WhatsApp me on 0344 499 1000. Sharon says, James, Starmer needs to stop dishing out all those billions of taxpayers' money to other countries. I'm sick of him doing this. He needs to keep our money for our people, says Sharon. Dan in Kent says, morning, James. Great to see you grace our screens again. It's nice to be, mate. Rachel Reeves has said we need to be optimistic. Well, I expect her resignation first thing Monday morning. That'll be a good start. Along with the Labour government, that'll be better. James, you need to see the article in the Telegraph, says Stuart, regarding how much of a baden Starmer and Hermer. Who's Starmer and Harmer? Oh, Starmer and Harmer. Right, OK. Are working against British interests, supporting terrorists and other despicable individuals, says Stuart. Joanna from Salisbury. Good morning, James. Welcome back. Thank you. Rachel Reeves, reverse all her policies, then shut down financing net zero, increase the tax allowances to at least £18,000 a year, stop giving union employees pay rises, and then do us a favour and resign. Maybe just resign in the first place and let somebody else do all that. Sean says, great to see you back. What a moronic thinking does the useless article Rachel from Customer Complaints have? First, she takes more money away from people and expects growth. Then she targets the rich so they go and live elsewhere. She's then surprised we haven't got enough in the coffers. It's more idiocy. This level of incompetence has to be deliberate. James Max, yay! So miss him in the mornings, says Nikki in Slough. Right, I won't say where else you've been, Nikki. Yes. She's been to the dark side. Oh. Good morning, James, says Sharon. It's good to see you this morning. Just need to get rid of this Reeves woman. She's absolutely useless. Cannot give us, the UK people, a dose of positivity. She's useless and so boring, says Sharon in Staffordshire. Meanwhile, I've got some breaking news. Yeah. Which is not good news, really. And it kind of is indicative of companies up and down the country which I think are struggling to find their role. WH Smith, it's reported, in secret talks to sell historic High Street arm. So WH Smith talks to sell the entire High Street business in Britain. It's been 230 years since they opened their first shop in central London. This is according to Sky News. They can reveal that the listed retail group, market cap of £1.5 billion, have been in negotiations with a number of prospective buyers of the division for several weeks. Could have significant implications for the 500 stores and 5,000 people who are employed up and down the nation. It's not going out of business, by the way. It's just that they're trying to find a new buyer. I mean, I don't know about you, I used to love going to Smith's.
Yeah, it used to be where I used to get all my kind of school equipment and that kind of shop. And then
it sort of had quite an interesting sort of smell about
it.
Yes, they
the
all
smell.
smelled the same.
Yes, they all smelled the same. And for
sort
some
of
reason...
the inside of a pencil case.
Yeah, but it was always just a variety of things you could buy in a W.A. Smith's that I always found fascinating. You could buy a sandwich and a bookcase and something else, all in the same shop. It confused me no end. But
I have a slight problem with Smith's as it currently stands. Every time I go in there, I feel slightly violated because of their pricing.
Oh.
And also the aggressive till selling strategy. So in addition to the fact that some of the pricing is way off, and look, I recognise that companies need to make money, but don't extract the money.
Yes, yeah.
And the second thing is, when I've got to the till, I've kind of decided what I want to buy. Stop making me stand in the queue for way too long, and then with lots of bags of stuff that I don't need.
Yeah, I agree.
Or shouldn't buy. I mean, look, everybody loves a Haribo, but there's a time and a place.
Agreed. But
there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
03444991000 is the telephone number to join the conversation. Vernon's in Staffordshire. Vernon, good morning.
Greetings, James. It's just like a Monday morning, isn't it, James? Lenny first, Vernon second. How are you?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit like that, except, of course, that isn't the way anymore, and the sun is out. Although Dave is behind the glass. Oh, he's just waved his jazz hands at me.
We just need...
Or was it his bingo wings?
We just need Jibber Jabber Ken to ring, don't we?
Oh, I'm sure Jibber Jabber Ken will turn up at some point. Peter Barnes is shocked and horrified by all this nonsense.
I have no idea.
who ring regularly and we have conversations, Vernon.
Indeed, James. Rachel from accounts has got it terribly wrong. Business is the most important thing in this country. Business funds everything. Let that sink in.
So when I've asked the question in the past, though, Vernon, let me ask. When I've asked that question in the past and I've said, what's the most important thing? Many people will ring up and say, the number one thing is immigration and they want to see that tackled. Would you say that it's immigration and business? Do you think it's business first? Is it the economy that sorts everything out for us? How do you prioritise those two things?
Well, the quickest thing to sort the economy out is to get a platform correct for business, and so few people actually understand this. The current accounts manager, Rachel, and our business secretary, who's never run a business in his life, they have no idea what is required. It's really simple. If you get the platform correct for business to make money, business will make money, it will pay lots of taxes, it will employ lots of people who will also pay lots of taxes. Public services do nothing other than provide service.
Can I ask a question, though, Vernon? Because people will say, yeah, but look at the difference between rich and poor. The gulf between rich and poor is widened. At what stage is a tax take the right amount, and when does it become greedy?
Like anything else, it's greedy now, because what's happening, if we look at the facts, take away the emotion, 48,000 people are no longer employed as of last month, which means 48,000 people are now taking from the state, and 48,000 people are not contributing to those costs. It's for the birds. It's common sense. You have to get business correct, i.e. to do that you have to get the platform right, you have to incentify them, and then when business is contributing lots of money to lots of people, then guess what? The government gets lots of tax, and it can improve public services and all these things.
What's the maximum amount of tax that any individual should pay?
Personally, I think my way would be it should start at 20,000, and the maximum should be 45% maximum.
And does that because 45% of just putting that in simple terms, it means that if you have a tax rate of 45%, that means that if you earn £100, 45 of those £100 will go in tax. Now, there are a lot of people who seem not to, it is enormous, but then there are a lot of people who don't seem to understand that because of the way our tax system works, you might actually end up paying £60 in that £100 because you might be paying income tax, and then you might be paying tax on your fuel, and then you might be paying VAT, and then you might be paying insurance tax, and then of course you've got your council tax, and you've got travel tax and all these other things. So your net effective tax rate might be 60-70%, which in my mind is so high that it doesn't incentivise anybody to get off their rear ends and work harder.
James, it's really simple. Those very wealthy people, if the tax is too high, I'm an Aston Villa fan. We have 2 billionaire owners. One lives in London. He's an Egyptian chap. Okay, enormously wealthy. Yes, he is going to leave this country, and he'll set up in Abu Dhabi, where we won't get any money. So you can either have half a bar, or you can have no bar. It's really, really simple. But you have to start with putting people in the right places.
Why doesn't
you take a bookkeeper to run the economy? It don't work.
Why does Rachel Reeves not seem to understand these just basic points?
Because it's the politics of envy. Okay, she's Labour. Story, that horrible word, Angela Rayner. We're going to take from the rich and we're going to give it to the poor. Well, guess what? The rich will be gone by the time you try and take it. It's a fact of life. The rich lead the way in the world. I'm sorry to tell everybody, and they'll crucify me on socials now. Well, how dare he? But the fact of the matter is, those entrepreneurs are leaders. Leaders generate profits. Profits generate tax. And guess what? Public services are brilliant when there's tax, but at the moment there's no tax, and we're just getting more and more into debt. And when
that's the other thing, which I don't think people are focused on, which is as a direct result of what Rachel Reeves has done, she's raised the tax burden and taken more money out of people's pockets. In addition to that, because the markets are so concerned about what she's done, they've raised the country's interest rates. We have so much debt that more of the money that she was taking in tax has now got to go to service that debt, won't even go into public services, because the markets are not confident that what she's doing is the right thing.
Correct, but she's not an economist. She's not competent. She's a bookkeeper. That's all she is. Make the coffee at the Bank of England. I'm sorry, harsh as it might sound, we have an incompetent business secretary, call him what you will, who's last run a charity. I mean, no disrespect, I could run a charity in the first 2 hours when I wake up in the morning. We don't have a bookkeeper who's running the country's finances.
I think you make some very good points and powerful points. Vernon, thank you very much indeed for those. Peter, your reaction to what Vernon said?
I think Vernon is absolutely spot on. I think that one of the major problems is that Rachel Reeves and most of the cabinet have never lived in the real world. Like we were talking just to the break then, James.
How do we encourage those who genuinely have real experience? Because when we have those who have real experience and they're put into the House of Lords because we say we need that experience, then we criticise the system for saying they're not accountable, they're not elected.
Yeah, so basically, I don't think it's necessarily putting them in the Lords. It's actually making the changes to the system that they recommend. Half of the problem is they give out all this advice, and the system doesn't change because the civil service is stuck in the way that it's done. We live in a country of, well, that's the way we've always done it, and that has to change. We are stuck in a kind of like middle management kind of focus, and we've got to start celebrating and pushing people to take risk. Risk is what we really need.
So if Rachel Reeves was really honest about it, Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. No, Britain needs a dose of Trump in charge. Somebody like Trump, an entrepreneurial individual who genuinely understands business, finance, property, managing people, managing situations, and is going to make tough decisions that we're not necessarily going to like, but they're actually the right decisions.
Definitely. But one thing, I'd go back to what you were saying there about the priorities. I think one thing we have to get into our heads is that there is no such thing as the priority. Everything is connected to everything else. So we have to start having these, I really understand that one policy, say in education, has to affect our economy. We have to start having what we used to call joined up government.
We do.
And we have no industrial strategy. That is what Vernon is bang on. We have no business. We have business secretary is MIA. We have an economy that is like it's dead in the water. There is no wind. There is no direction. We're not sailing it anywhere, and that is why we're stagnating. We're going anywhere.
It absolutely is. Now we're going to get some more stories from you, Peter. Plus, I've got a revelation to make. We'll do that next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
10:40 is the time. It's me, James Max, with you till 1 o'clock here on Talk this Saturday morning. Taking calls on Rachel Reeves. She's on the front page of the Times because she has said Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. And then she goes on to tell us that she knows exactly what needs to be done. I don't think she does. And that's why I've opened the phone lines for you. So perhaps you can tell me what Rachel Reeves needs to do. 0344 499 1000. Sorry, I was just thinking of something which, again, is not broadcastable as to what she could do. But I don't think that would help. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. What needs to be done? What does Rachel Reeves need to do? Also, the revelation that I promised, you will find in today's money section of the Financial Times. Peter Barnes, who's with me at the moment. Peter, are you a reader of the Financial Times?
Every now and then, I have to admit, a lot of it does rather go over the head.
Oh.
I read it for kind of getting the sense of the business world and the economy, but the technical details do somewhat pass me by.
Well, look, the FT Weekend is a great paper. As I bring it up here, look, there it is. That's free. And in it, there's a section called Money, where a lovely lady called Claire Barrett, she writes as well. Oh, look here. It's a wonderful article here.
Oh, is there?
Yeah. It says, does a 50-something need to be brand aware? Oh, it's by some bloke called James Max.
Oh,
no! There we are. There I am in today's
self-publication.
FT. Oh dear. Oh dear. That is absolutely shameless.
Shameless. Shameless. On a Saturday
They didn't
morning.
know where I was going behind the glass, and now they're just almost coming in to take me off there. If you want to go and buy the FT Weekend, you can find me in there. Other papers are available. Anyway, we must turn our attention, though, to more serious stories. This in today's Daily Telegraph. Prime Minister rejects whole life term over Southport. It is absolutely astonishing, really. Keir Starmer has opposed whole life sentences for teenage murderers such as the Southport killer. Downing Street has indicated Axel Rudy Cabana, who is sentenced to a minimum of 52 years. It sounds like a lot, but 52 years for the atrocities
It's horrendous.
that he perpetrated. Absolutely extraordinary. Justice Goose, the judge, expressed frustration that he could not impose a whole life order. I mean, it does raise a question to me, and we will be asking later in the show. I suppose the difference, why are we selective when it comes to treating children like children? That on one hand, you've got Keir Starmer and his bunch of merry idiots wanting to give 16-year-olds a vote saying they're adults. And then the next second, something like this, which is an adult level crime of the most horrific proportions, and that child, according to the law, shouldn't be treated like an adult. I don't understand. You've got to be consistent with this, and I would say that if you are even advocating, and I don't, by the way, that 16-year-olds should get the vote, I should think, I'm sorry, if you're largely in full-time education, you're being paid for by other people.
Yeah.
You do not have the right to vote yet.
No, I completely
Form
agree.
your views.
Yep.
Have your views. Put your case.
Yep.
Have your, build. You've got plenty of time to give your vote.
Yes, couldn't agree more.
And it shouldn't be done for
gerrymandering. And I think over
gerrymandering.
the last few years, realistically, what we've been having rather quietly and underneath a lot of these big stories is, when does a child become an adult? We've had it in the trans argument. We've had it when we come to votes at 16. We've had it for people joining the army. Now we've got it in this case as well. It is a major theme in the last, I'd say, 10 years, and I think it's now starting to come to the forefront of what you've just said, the inconsistencies and how.
And also
we
the
treat this
messaging,
issue.
exactly, how we treat people and the messaging. Now, let's bring in Ken Hines, a knife crime and stop and search campaigner, joins me now. Ken, good morning to you.
Yes, good morning.
Look, we have so many societal problems, perhaps, as we channel our sort of inner horror at what's happened. Prime Minister rejecting whole life term over Southport. I just wonder whether you agree or whether you don't, that I don't really mind what age you are. If you perpetrate a crime such as this, there should be no limit to the punishment that you can be given.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to send my deepest condolences out to the families affected by this horrendous act of savagery, and also the community, and that's also that's definitely been affected by it.
Of course.
Now, my thing is simply this, is that a 60-year-old in 1985 is completely different to a 60-year-old in today's time. The savagery that some of these young people are now conducting needs to be looked at in the same vein as an adult, as far as I'm concerned.
So does that mean that when the Prime Minister rejecting a whole life term over this particular crime, just saying it's not appropriate, we should be treating those under the age of 18 with different rules, you would say that's sending the wrong message?
Absolutely. Because, you know, murder is murder and savagery is savagery. And regardless what age I believe you are, you need to be held accountable for your action. Things are getting from bad to worse. Young people have got so much rights, but what we don't teach them is the accountability and responsibility that goes with those rights that they have acquired. And as a response, they now do as they please. I'm thinking that they can do it without any kind of consequence.
And is that because we have lost either respect for the rule of law in this country, or that law and order has, because they are funded less or perhaps less present on our streets? I mean, I've been complaining for, last 20 years about the proliferation of CCTV. Yeah, I see its benefits, I see its ability to help in criminal convictions, but ultimately there is no alternative but for visual presence of police on our streets. I think we have to stop being so worried about targeting different age groups of whether it's children or male or female, that it's more likely to be males, it's more likely to be in inner cities, it's more likely to be perhaps children between the ages of 12 and 30 with knives and various things. Target, I mean, if the police need to target to rid knives and crime off our streets, then they should be able to do it without criticism.
Now that's where I will beg to differ from what you just said.
Okay.
Because what's happened, what I see on the streets is that there's less respect for the police. There's no respect for the police from young people in today's time. Now,
well, then I think we're in agreement, because I would say that's exactly the problem.
But I will put it down to the way that stop and search has been conducted, because this is where we diverge from that. Because stop and search, I believe that if 8 out of 10 stops and search lead to no further action, but it can lead to a person being stopped and scarred, the consequence, particularly for my community, is that we are less likely to turn to the police if we become a victim of crime.
And I can see that argument. What is the alternative to stop and search that removes knives, particularly, off our streets?
There's not one thing that fits that, but what I would say that's quite prominent is what's happening in the schools. The young people are spending most of their time under the supervision of the schools, and I believe that more needs to be done in schools to recognise what's happening with these young people.
I mean, do you think that, for example, schools, you talk about it, I mean, downstairs at this building, if you don't have a pass, you will be put through security, and it's like airline style security. I no longer see it as targeting or victimisation or anything else. It's just like, it's there, we don't know who you are, we want to make sure that everybody's safe in this building. Do we need to do such things at schools and just say, look, everybody, teachers, visitors, pupils, I'm sorry, until or unless we got rid of this horrible scourge, you're all going to be checked and tested?
It's quite clear that these actions ain't taking place in the schools, but it's taking place generally around schools or outside schools. So what the young people would do, they'll find ways of circumventing that sort of security. What we've got to reach out to is get into the mindset of these young people. Now, I'm staggered that when I see the pictures of his bedroom, and to see that where all these weapons and rifles were, what was in the parents' head? Why aren't the parents?
I genuinely, I agree with you 100%. It's just like, how can you not know what your children are up to? I understand that children need to have respect in their private space and all that sort of business, but that doesn't mean that, you know, if something's going wrong, if you can tell if something's going wrong with a relationship between you and a child, if that relationship is wrong, how on earth you can not know that that's going on inside your home? I genuinely don't understand.
Look, and it's quite clear this is a complex case, because for 4 years he was under the supervision of the hospital, and he'd been caught with a knife on the bus. He'd been caught in a knife in schools. It was a car crash waiting to happen, and you can tell me that nobody flagged this up or nobody knew about this. Even his father, who stopped him from doing the mass killing outside, no doubt going to the school. Again, I don't know, where's the support for the family? Because I know, as a mentor, that we get called in to these families. We can't save all the children, but there's success stories that in the ones that we do, who goes on to do more.
I think you make some really powerful points, Ken. Sadly, time is against us, and we must leave it there. But thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. That's Ken Hines, knife crime and stop and search campaigner. So, if you want to join that conversation, we will be taking some calls on why we're selective when treating children like children, what you think perhaps needs to change when it comes to dealing and tackling knife crime, and also, you know, the Prime Minister and your response to him rejecting whole life terms over Southport. We'll come to that story, and indeed we'll take some more stories from Peter Barnes. That's coming up next on Talk.
I've been asked earlier today not to mention his name, and I'm not going to, because I think that's good. I think that's quite right. Why would we give him the honour of naming him? And in fact, you know what? You put a picture up of him. Let's get rid of that. Let's not even put his picture anymore in front of the people. It's a horrible picture. He looks demented. He looks deranged. I think it's better if we don't even see that picture anymore. You know, let's consign him to the dustbin of history, and let's hope we never hear from him or his representatives ever again.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
10:55 is the time. Time is running away with us. Peter Barnes is in the studio with me. We're going through some of the top stories, and I promise we'll come back to your phone calls. Might have to do that after the news at 11, I'm afraid, Peter, because we've got to talk about this. Nigel Farage, he's in the news today.
There's a shock.
He says, he's out of the Trump notebook. Keep yourself in the news every single day.
Yes.
Every day.
Yeah.
But anyway, he says the party has all the momentum in British politics, with the chairman claiming it is headed for government. Reform UK topped a national poll for the first time in the wake of the sentencing of the Southport killer. Nigel Farage's party, which have accused Keir Starmer of being part of the cover-up of the truth about the attacks, now leads Labour and the Tories, according to a survey by Find Out Now. I don't know who Find Out Now are, but we've now found out that they're ahead. What do you make of this?
Well, it's important to note that this is just one poll. Find Out Now also the way that they put their polls together. Now this gets a little technical, but I'll be brief.
Yes, because you're a strategist,
so this
you
is
understand
so I look at all this stuff.
So have they made it up?
So no, what they've done is they take very likely voters and definitely voters, and they combine them together. All the other pollsters just use definitely. So this is why. So there's a lot of tricks going on here.
And I think, but there's an important point here. A lot of people didn't vote at the last election because they were so annoyed, I think, and frustrated.
Definitely.
It doesn't take many people who didn't vote last time to either vote or change a vote to say, actually, I've had enough. And I think when people look at... I went to Prime Minister's Question Time this week in the Houses of Parliament, and I thought Starmer did an efficient job, but he spoke like a lawyer, certainly lacking leadership. And I thought Kemi Badenoch was appalling. She was just weak.
She's inconsistent for sure. She has some
went
weak
after.
voices.
There are so many important things.
Yes.
There was the economy. There was what was happening in, with Southport. We've got what was happening over in the United States of America. We've got significant interests that the UK has, and she decided to go on an educational story based on the utterances of one head teacher, who I respect. I like that head teacher, but that should have been, out of the 6 questions she had, one of them.
Yes, I completely agree. There is a significant problem, I think, within the Conservatives at the moment about how to target and actually attack the Labour Party. There is an old saying, obviously, when an enemy is injuring itself, leave them to it. But the problem is that you need to show the country that you are the alternative. Reform at the moment are showing that. I'm not a great Reform supporter or fan. However, their messaging is on point. Their media targeting is on point. Their entire machine.
But also, they seem to understand.
Brilliant.
Absolutely, they seem to understand the stories that people care about.
That's true.
And they also have an answer to direct questions. What are you
this
going
is where
to
I
do
would
about...
disagree with you, because I sat here when Zia Youssef was being interviewed by Kevin O'Sullivan, and he skirted over many questions without giving direct answers. He gave the answer, well, I'm not going to write policy live on national television.
Now,
so this is my big problem with Reform.
No, I understand that. But when you ask Nigel Farage a question, he will give you a straight answer.
Yes, the problem is that when you ask Richard Tice on a different channel the same question, you often get a different answer. This is the big problem with Reform, is the left-hander doesn't talk to the right hand. I often wonder, when we look at the Shamima Begum explosion for Reform just the other day, who was informed of what and when? So there seems to be this is whatever Nigel wants, Nigel gets, and everybody else must follow along until there is full democratisation of that party, which Zia Youssef has yet to deliver on. I am not convinced that the Reform really are ready for government. Nigel Farage is ready to be Prime Minister.
I don't think that'll stop anybody. I mean, look at the Labour Party. They're not ready for government, and they're in government.
That's very true, but unfortunately, we need the Labour Party out, and it's looking like the Reform Party and the Tory Party are going to have to get together in a room and sort this out. But how that's going to play out, I just don't know, because this poll leads to a hung Parliament.
There we go. Well, another mess arrives. Peter Barnes, thank you so much for joining me. We take more of your calls as we tackle Rachel Reeves next on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock this Saturday morning, the 25th of January. Good morning, I'm James Max. I'm with you until 1 o'clock. All sorts still to discuss with you. We're going to be talking about the UK's worst car, finding out a little bit more about Storm Eowyn and indeed the damage and aftermath, and discussing that. Plus, we continue our conversation this morning about Rachel Reeves. She's on the front pages of many of the papers, and indeed the Times. Reeves, Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. And inside that particular paper, in a double-page spread interview, she says she knows what needs to be done. Really? I don't think she does. So I'm asking you, what do you want to tell Rachel Reeves to do? What do you think she needs to do to save the country and to save the economy? You can give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. Of course, you can send me a text, 87222. Start your text with the word talk. And I'm really sorry if I've got behind on the socials. There are a mound of messages, so please do keep them coming in. I will come to as many of them as I can, and indeed as many of your calls. If you've never called a radio station before, if you've never called me before, now is the time to do so. We've got a few free lines into the building. It's 0344 499 1000. Tell me what you would like Rachel Reeves to do. She says she knows what she wants to do. I don't think she knows what she's doing. Also, by the way, we will be talking about the Prime Minister's rejection of whole life terms over Southport, taking more of your calls on that as well. And if that wasn't enough, talking about storms and Ukraine and various other things as well between now and 1. 0344 499 1000. That is the telephone number. However, let's get a view on Rachel Reeves and what she's saying and what she's doing. Laurie Laird is an economist. Joins me now. Laurie, good morning.
Good morning, James.
Thank you so much for joining us here on Talk. So, Rachel Reeves says she knows what she wants to do. She says that we need a dose of Trump positivity. Has she forgotten that she needs a bit of economic policy to actually assist the economy in growing?
She really is not making a good impression here. You know, I agree with what you said. She doesn't appear to have a plan. She keeps telling us she has a plan. But then when you read that the Treasury is hauling in heads of regulatory agencies and asking them for advice on how to grow the economy, it doesn't really fill you with any kind of optimism, does it? And I think this is underreported, the pressure that the Treasury is putting on regulators to somehow accelerate growth. Regulators are there for a reason. Regulators are there to protect us. They're there to take the punch bowl away when the party gets going, not to add more rum. You're looking at the Financial Times today, and I'm sorry, I'm just obsessed with this. I'm going straight over to you, but the Financial Times is reporting that the Treasury wants to water down some of the audit proposals. They want to make it easier for auditors to give companies a clean bill of health. This is not that long after BHS collapsed with a big hole in its pension fund. Regulators are there for a reason, and it's not to accelerate growth.
Now, any opportunity to push the paper for which I write a column, the FT Weekend, I will happily do so. Jobs cut, rekindle stagnation fears is on their front page. They're not regularly accused of pulling apart a Labour Party, sometimes pink paper in nature and thought and some of the things that they say. But they certainly don't seem to be giving Rachel Reeves a good write-up. I just want to, at the risk of being boring, Laurie, I just want to step back as to those who would advocate higher taxes. Why sometimes, if you put tax up, might you actually receive less money in the coffers?
Well, look, it depends on which taxes you're looking at. And I know there is a school of thought that if you lower taxes, people will work more, and therefore tax aggregates, at some point at a later date. It sort of depends where those taxes fall. And I think you and I have discussed this before. I think the original sin with Rachel Reeves was to rule out any kind of taxes on increase in income tax, to accept 2/3 of the tax base, VAT, income tax,
but with due
when she
respect,
needed to
though,
raise revenue.
Yeah, but with due respect, she has increased income tax because she's left the thresholds at the same level in an inflationary environment. So she's already increased. She's already increased those taxes.
Yeah, it's a stealth tax increase. You're absolutely right, because inflation boosts incomes. It doesn't necessarily boost buying power, but it boosts income and drags a lot of people into higher tax brackets. I think what Rachel Reeves assumed is if she increased the employer's NI contribution, that decision was made thinking that the UK labour market is pretty strong right now. The problem is we don't have great data on the UK labour market. The Office for National Statistics has said that the survey that they derive the unemployment rate from is broken, and they won't be able to fix it until 2027 or so. But the assumption, I think, was employment is pretty safe right now. The unemployment rate's at a historic low, so let's try and raise taxes on employers. We're starting to see now. We had an announcement yesterday from Sainsbury, 3,000 jobs to go. There's some anecdotal survey evidence from purchasing managers indicating that companies are planning to let people go at the quickest rate since 2009. Take that survey with a bit of a grain of salt, but it's looking like the employment market isn't as strong as Rachel Reeves thought it was when she announced these stung employers with a higher tax.
How can we trust anything that Rachel Reeves says when, on one hand, there was evidence last week in this article in the Times that 10,000 millionaires left the UK in 2024. What would Reeves say to them? She disputes the figures but highlights plans for more visas for highly skilled migrants. The fact is that we're going to see a U-turn on that particular policy, it would appear, from reports coming out. Yeah. And then she says, in this article, she says, the tax rises in the budget were a necessity. There will be no going back. It's not possible to back down on these things. The public finances were an absolute mess. I had to make a number of difficult decisions around welfare on spending tax, both in July and the budget. If I start reversing tax increases, that stability that I've returned to the public finances would unravel. Well, she's already done one U-turn. She needs to do more, doesn't she?
Well, I'm taking exception now with Rachel Reeves constantly saying, I'm making the tough decisions. I think we're seeing that this government is a little bit frightened of standing up to vested interests. One big story, again, underreported this week, and I'm back to my regulatory obsession, is the Competition and Markets Authority. The Treasury sort of pushed out the chairman of that agency. The Competition and Markets Authority makes sure that competition exists. If you have too few players in any industry, they can raise prices, we tend to pay more. The chairman of that agency was pushed out, replaced by the ex-head of Amazon. Amazon, not really a market sort of company. Amazon has a dominant market position, and it looks like the government is scared to stand up to the regulators, scared to stand up to vested interests.
But also, she seems to be scared to make the decisions that she needs to take. So you are an economist, Laurie. So if you were trying to drive growth, I'm not necessarily asking for a whole range of specific policies, but just one sign that the Chancellor actually wanted to develop growth. What would be the first thing that you would do if suddenly somebody saw common sense and shoved you into number 11 Downing Street?
I think that, oh, God forbid, but I think that the first thing that the government has to do is prove that it can fix the planning system, and it can take on those vested interests, make it easier for people to live and work to live where they want to work, make it easier for people to have housing near where they want to work. The government has said it's going to be bold on planning. We haven't seen a whole lot of
But we haven't seen any changes on that.
Yet.
But then, Laurie, there are enough planning permissions already in place to deal with the UK's housing problem. If you really want to solve the housing issue, you've got to change the financing market, you've got to change the tax system, and you've got to change your attitude to taxing risk and reward. Because those developers, they will develop if they've got the labour available to do it and if they've got the money available to build. But development finance remains incredibly expensive and very difficult to get hold of. And taxes have gone up, which means that risk reward returns. A lot of developers are saying to me, not going to do it in this environment, too much risk, not enough return.
Well, it's not just housing that needs where we need to see a streamlined planning. It's corporate building as well, building factories, building laboratories. I mean, life sciences is an area in which we have a competitive advantage. But again, it's difficult for people to build these scientific buildings in the places where they want to build them. If you look at Cambridge, lots of people want to build there, but there are water issues. Is the government going to take on these interests? But to get back to housing, something that I'm concerned about here is the government talking about leaning on the banks to lend people more money to buy a house. We've been here before. Encouraging people to take on debt that they may not be able to pay back is not a long-term plan for growth.
It certainly isn't, Laurie. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. That's Laurie Laird, economist, giving us her thoughts on Rachel Reeves, saying that Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. But then also, Rachel Reeves comments that she knows what needs to be done. As soon as you read the words in her article, you realise that she doesn't, which is why I'm asking the question, what does Rachel Reeves need to do? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Dan is in Leeds. Dan, good morning. Morning, Dan. Oh, Dan's disappeared. We'll try and get Dan back. Let's go to David, who's in London. Hi, David.
Hi, James. Yeah, James, it's really maddening hearing about Rachel Reeves talking about positivity. She should go up to businesses who are stuck in traffic on places like Park Lane and throughout the country where their roads have been ruined. And she should say to them, be positive, be positive. It's just ridiculous, James.
I think that's a really interesting point. So that's something that you might think, hang on a second, why are we talking about roads? Why are we talking about traffic jams? But actually, traffic and being able to get to the place where you're trying to do your work, being able to get around, being able to park, be able to go at a reasonable speed on a road rather than have 20-mile-an-hour limits everywhere because somebody's, worried about some emission. We're all being told to use electric vehicles, and then which doesn't make any difference what speed you go, and then we're suddenly told, oh no, you've got to go at 20 miles an hour everywhere, and we're going to fine you left, right and centre, and ULEZ and all these other things. Oh, I'm having a rant, sorry David, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah, thanks a lot, James. And so much of our money is, as you just said, it's going into fines, and so many people can't do businesses because they've had to spend so much money on ULEZ compliant cars. Thanks a lot, James.
No, I totally agree with you. If you could get Rachel Reeves to change something, I mean, would it be that you would make it, I don't know, easier to drive around and communicate, or are there other things that you would like to see her do?
We need to have a Trump-like, what I mean, James, is someone needs to come in and just reverse all of the changes that the previous government and Sadiq Khan made. The low traffic neighbourhoods, the bus lanes 24/7, banning vehicles from London Bridge, banning minicabs from going into the congestion zone, which that was under Sadiq Khan. That's massively increased traffic as well, and it means roads like Great Dover Street are empty, whereas Old Kent Road are busy. It's because minicabs can't go into central London anymore. It's stupid.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think transport is a really important component part that sometimes we don't connect all these things together, but in fact they should be. David, thank you for that. Let's try Dan again in Leeds. Dan, good morning. No? I don't know. Let's go to a voice note from Steve.
James, what Rachel Reeves should do is reverse the national insurance hike, cut corporation tax, cut to business tax, cut to council tax for businesses, and cut to council tax for everyday people, and to put the threshold up before you start paying tax, and put more money in people's pockets so that the economy will grow. And then also cut the petrol and VAT as well.
Good points, Steve. Thank you very much indeed for that. And if you want to leave a voice note, you can do so at 0344 499 1000, or you can give me a call, 0344 499 1000. I know, it's the same number. Let's just move to some of your messages. John from Hertford says, the irony of this joke of a government, the party that actively campaigned against Trump and have taken every opportunity to defame Trump's name and then call him a racist, fascist and Nazi, are now saying that we should have Trump positivity. Priceless. This country will get Trump positivity when you get a Trump-like government that's not destroying the country on the politics of envy and wokery ideology. John, I think you make some very powerful and strong points. Mike in Sussex says, James Reeve and the entire cabinet came into power dishing out a huge dose of economic negativity. The latest statement is so hypocritical but not surprising. Also funny how Labour want to reduce the voting age but not the adult age of criminal responsibility. Out of touch and a useless government, says Mike in Sussex. Dean in Staffordshire says, so good to have you back on our screens, James. Well, Dean, that's very kind. Thank you. You're missed in the mornings. I'm not sure I miss it in the mornings, but, you know, it is what it is. I mean, I'd take later in the mornings, but I think somebody else is there. Rachel Reeves just needs to do about 5 things to boost the economy, says Richard. Number 1, remove stamp duty or anyone buying a property up to £500,000. Reduce duty to a flat rate of 1% on anything. Reduce corporation tax to 10%. Encourage property development by making planning a central government operation, not part of the local council. And encourage business to invest by offering tax incentives and reintroduce entrepreneurs' tax relief on any business sales of up to £20 million. That's from Richard, which I think would probably deal with some of these ridiculous... we got the farmers protesting again. Why? Because farming is so important to this country, employs so many people up and down this country. And as an urbanite, and as urban people, we tend not to understand farming communities. What I do understand is how hard it is. What I do understand is this inheritance tax. When you're asking families to do what other people don't do. We're asking children and grandchildren of owners of farms to go into the family business. Not an easy thing to do. And it's blowing hard work. And then you're saying, oh, and by the way, we're going to tax the farm on the way. Tax it if they sell it. Tax it if they sell bits off for building. Fine, don't have a problem. Don't tax it if it's remaining as farming land. Leave it out of the tax system, is what I would say. Anyway, Rachel Eustace, she's still there. What does she need to do? 0344 499 1000. We take more of your calls and your comments. That's next on Talk.
fact that Keir Starmer hasn't even picked up the phone to the president it's an absolute disgrace, and it doesn't instill much confidence in international relations.
He's not even in the top 10 of countries that Donald Trump wants to talk to. Yesterday, he had a conversation with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, in where he extracted $600 billion out of him. Starmer's just looking more and more irrelevant, isn't he?
It's not the great power that it once was, and, you know, we're an international laughingstock, Mike.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
22 minutes past 11 o'clock. It's me, James Max. I'm with you till 1. By the way, hello! Have I got a show for you tomorrow? Oh, yes! We've got James Murray. He's an MP. Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. So he's Treasury Minister. So the conversations that we're having today about Rachel Reeves, I'll be putting some of your questions to him tomorrow. Plus, we're going to be speaking with Nigel Farage, he's leader of Reform. He'll be joining me at some point during tomorrow's programme. And, the tour is still to be confirmed. We hope to have a full, proper set. So you can join me from 10 o'clock after David Ball tomorrow, where I shall be in this hot seat once again. Meanwhile, the phone lines are open because I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you about Rachel Reeves. She's kind of annoyed me today, but she says, I know what needs to be done. I don't think she does know what needs to be done. I'm sure she's a very well-meaning person. I'm sure she's studied hard at school, but she has little, if any, real-life experience of what she's discussing. I don't think she genuinely understands economic policy, and I think the decisions that she's taken are ideologically based on the basis that, I don't know, I mean, wealth redistribution. To an extent, I get it and I understand it. But if you've made it, and you are successful, you should be able to choose to spend your money in the way that you would like. There is a role for the state, in my view. I want to see children educated, but what's the first thing they do when they go and spend money on education? It's not about reducing class size, which actually makes a big difference to schools and schooling. It's not about making sure that we got better playing fields and better equipment and schools, or reducing class sizes. No, they go and do breakfast clubs. Where did the responsibility for being a parent to feed your blooming child come from? Or get lost? £300 million and they spend it on that. Billions of pounds being sent overseas to be spent on overseas aid investment. By all means, do it when we're wealthy. Pause it for now. I don't think we got the money. We've got people here who are sleeping on the streets. We've got people here who need to have assistance. We've got people here who should be incarcerated. We've got people here who need housing. And by the way, stop thinking that as a government that you can provide state housing. It doesn't work. Get private companies to do it. They'll do it. And get them to do it properly. Regulate them effectively. Anyway, 03444991000 is the number. What should Rachel Reeves be doing? You tell me. Claire is in the Wirral. Hi, Claire.
Hi, James.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Good to hear you.
Well, it's nice to be back.
Great. Yeah, good to see you. Well, Rachel Reeves, she's unfortunately, she's not singing from the same song sheet as Trump. Trump is a Republican, yes. And the socialist Labour regime, they align with the Democrats. So
well, they do, but she's not even singing. She's not even singing from her own hymn sheet. So her own hymn sheet, the song title is Growth, and then the text of the song is telling her to tax more, spend more, do all the things that don't provide growth.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, the socialist regime, I mean, it's not a socialist thing to actually get growth. I don't know. I mean, they're just totally out of step with talking up this country and wealth creation. Her party, unlike Trump, have been divisive by calling out our population as being right-wing. So it's up to our right-wing population to talk it up. I mean, slamming us down, but asking us for enthusiastic acceptance of a sham government is crazy.
But do you think, though, that in this day and age, when we talk about left and right wing, to my mind, it seems nonsensical to ask for a fair tax system, in my view, is not about being left or right wing. To ask for immigration to be controlled, not about or right wing. To ask for policies that make sense for strong defence or strong security on our streets, again, is not left or right wing. It's just common sense.
It's common sense, but this actual regime hasn't got any common sense, actually, James.
So when Rachel Reeves says, I know what needs to be done, what would you say to her?
I would just say that everything that she has done so far, she's got to change. I mean, and also, talking to our population, when Trump had his inauguration, he spoke to the whole of the public. He didn't actually talk about political persuasions of his public. It was his public. He didn't call them right wing or left wing.
No, he didn't. He just addressed the nation. Talking of addressing the nation, we've now got Reform topping the national poll for the first time. What does that say about either Rachel Reeves or indeed the Labour Party policies? Do you think that they are a one-term government?
They are a one-term government. I mean, I hope they're going to be a one-term government. But unfortunately, with Reform taking over, I would feel sorry for Reform because this country, it's already broken. It's going to be demolished by the next time. We have a.
Do you not think it can be fixed then?
It's going to have to be fixed. I don't know. I mean, what can you do?
I don't think you're going to fix this country if you ignore the vast tracts of natural beauty and you stick wind farms all over it. If you ignore the planning concerns and destroy our farming industry and our farms up and down the country. If you destroy, if you like, our national infrastructure and also you don't control population to an extent and you don't provide the right natural and national services, then I think there are significant problems. Can it be fixed? Yes, it can. But let's just hope that we just don't demolish everything on the way.
Yeah, I hope so, James. I really do. Because you've got to have some sort of hope. And I think the people in this country haven't got hope anymore. Maybe not. I mean, people are hopeful because they're turning towards Reform.
You know what I'm hopeful for?
What's that?
That Rachel Reeves resigns and the Labour government implodes and we have a nice national election.
Well, I hope for that as well, James. And it's a good New Year's hope, isn't it?
It is. I think we might be waiting slightly longer than we want, but I can hold my breath, and I guess we're all going to have to hold a breath and hold our nose whilst they put all these awful policies through. But hopefully this will teach a new generation that Labour is not the great panacea, and maybe they'll be out of power for another generation until we have to endure them again. Claire, thank you very much indeed for your call. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Talking about Rachel Reeves, we will also be talking about Storm Eowyn and the terrible destruction that it's left in its path. We'll be speaking very shortly to Joe Wheeler, meteorologist, very shortly to talk about that, plus taking more of your calls. So if you want to have your say on Rachel Reeves, on what could be done, on what she should be doing, on what you'd like to tell her to do, you can give me a call. It's 0344 499 1000. And we'll have some more of your voice notes and your calls and your texts. That's all coming up on Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It's 11:33. It's me, James Max, with you until 1 here on Talk this Saturday morning. Taking your calls on Rachel Reeves, 0344 499 1000. So she said she knows what needs to be done. It's very clear that she doesn't know what needs to be done to fix the economy. So I'm asking you what you think Rachel Reeves needs to do. 0344 499 1000. All sorts of voice notes, messages, calls coming in. If you've never called a radio station before, if you and I haven't spoken before, then do so. We'll come back to those because we just need to sort of pick up on what has been happening over the last few days. One dead, rail and ferry services badly hit, and hundreds of thousands of people left without power. I am, of course, talking about Storm Eowyn, which hit UK and Ireland. 1,000 flights cancelled amid danger to life. Rail and ferry services cancelled on Friday. And this poor man died after a tree fell onto his car in County Donegal, according to the police. But we've got further storms on the way. A lot of people perhaps looking into this as to why and how it happened. Joe Wheeler, meteorologist, joins me now. Joe, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Very often people talk about these things, and within a nanosecond, particularly if it's on the BBC, they'll be connecting this to climate change. Is there any connection to this storm and climate change?
Well, the weather is one of those things that happens by ripple effect, if you like, and we had this polar spill over the States. Now, any time that you get a temperature differential in the States, that strengthens the jet stream. So we ended up with, well, it was snow in Florida, wasn't it? You know, a state that's got no snow ploughs, no preparation for snow whatsoever, but these cold temperatures and the snow came there. And then we got this very, very strong jet stream, and it was really a low-pressure system caught under that, which was then spun round. You know when you go to the fairground and that chap whirls the Wurlitzers? It's a bit like that. So this storm was spat out very close to Ireland with an intense low-pressure drop. Now, we call explosive cyclogenesis when a storm system drops 24 millibars in 24 hours. This one dropped 60. So you can imagine the tightening of the gradient, the very strong winds. There was potentially a sting jet as well. Measured over Ireland, 114.9 miles per hour. Other stations also recorded very high winds, but I have to say many of them broke. So, in fact, if the winds got stronger than that, we don't know about it at the moment. Unconfirmed reports that we had 118. So we've got extraordinary conditions across the states. Are those down to climate change, global warming? Potentially so, although I think they didn't really feel very warm. You get this strong jet, which on the night that it started to form, I think a plane travelling from the States to London managed to reach record speed, because planes often do that. They pick up the jet stream and then travel across. And then, of course, we saw this wild storm, Eowyn, that hit us. Now, luckily, the trajectory was as far northwest as it needed to be, but the strongest winds were on the southern flank. So affecting parts of Ireland, parts of Scotland, both saw winds over 100 miles per hour. And there was a map showing all the places that had seen wind gusts that were record wind gusts. And certainly for Ireland, the last time they saw winds like that, 113 miles per hour, was back in 1945 in Limerick. So it's an 80-year record. And of course, our records don't go back that much further. And any records previous to that may not be as accurate as they are today.
Now, in the past, we've had maybe criticisms or otherwise of whether it's weather forecasting or weather forecasters, or people have missed things. On this particular occasion, it would appear as if the technology and indeed the expertise of meteorologists was absolutely spot on. And arguably, the warnings that were given out, I know sometimes we complain of nanny in a state, but on this occasion, the warnings were spot on, saved lives. Meteorology, of course, you're looking into the future. It's tough, it's difficult. I'm assuming the technology has improved significantly.
It absolutely has. I mean, since the hurricane of 1987, which again was a sting jet, actually. So whilst there were strong winds, it was that last little bit that kind of flashed down at over 100 miles per hour that caused the problem. And sting jets are very difficult to forecast. Where you have an ordinary kind of storm coming across the Atlantic, you can watch it. You can see what it's doing. We have weather data from planes and boats and buoys that tell us exactly what's going on. These storms that undergo explosive cyclogenesis are very, very tricksy. You don't always know exactly where they're going to go. You can take a best guess. And of course, the way that we forecast is it's not just our modelling, it's modelling from many different countries and many different units. And eventually, when they come together in some kind of consensus, you can say with some confidence, this is what's going to happen, we all agree. Where you have a situation where you don't all agree, and one of them's got the storm running across the south and the other one's got it disappearing up into, polar regions, then you know you've got a problem because nothing is conferring with anything else. Might I just say, Eowyn was hard enough to say, tomorrow we've got Herminia, right? Complain about the warnings. Let's talk about the storm names.
Oh, the storm. No, don't get me going on that. Meanwhile, you mentioned another storm coming in. I've had a look at the weather forecast for the next week. It's not until next Friday or Saturday that we get any kind of calmness, certainly in the south. It would appear as if last time was wind. We've got to brace ourselves for an enormous amount of rain coming into the United Kingdom.
It's looking pretty wet and it's looking pretty windy. An awful lot of the impact is going to be literally in the Atlantic. It's going to be offshore, well, we hope, if it doesn't change trajectory. But the trouble is, this is like a double tap, isn't it? Because we saw these incredible winds. We saw so many trees uprooted. We saw a couple of tornadoes. We saw massive travel disruption. And now we're going to see these strong winds coming back, maybe not as strong as Eowyn, no way that strong. There are yellow warnings out for wind now, but, that's against the reds that we saw yesterday. And yes, there's further rain coming in. State of the ground at the moment, I wouldn't have thought it's too saturated. Certainly the weather's looking unsettled over the next few days, you're right. And that's very common. Once you get into this situation of, sort of like Atlantic rain showers, further Atlantic rain, wet and windy. And then we get a high pressure building. Now, you see this high pressure that builds towards the end of the month. Again, quite interesting because it's a very high pressure. The pressure is very high, even for high pressure, particularly at this time of year. And the centre of it moves. Now, of course, the winds go clockwise around high pressure. And so if it's out to the east of the UK, it's likely to feed in very cold air from Siberia. Think Beast from the East back in 2018. Yeah. If it stays to the west of the country, it's likely to be bringing a north-northwesterly. That's cold. If it's bringing in something from the near continent, there's a lot of cloud around, it's going to feed cloud in. So whilst when things become settled, they're not necessarily going to be changeable as well.
Right. OK. There's always weather, and the more weather that's on the way keeps people like you and perhaps me busy. Joe Wheeler, meteorologist, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning here on Talk and giving us your responses to Storm Eowyn, but also what's to come. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Let's pick up a voice note from Kate about Rachel Reeves.
Morning, James. Rachel Reeves, what does she need to do to save the economy? I think she needs to resign. I think she's made that much damage and said that much, but she's not worthy of anything. So she needs to resign. Thank you.
There we go. Kate, thank you very much indeed for your voice note. 0344 499 1000 to leave a voice note, also to give me a call, like Norman in Dartford. Hello, Norman.
Good morning, James.
Good morning, Norman.
Well, the lady's just said what I've said, what's going to say.
Oh.
Yeah, she shouldn't do anything but resign.
So there's nothing she can say, nothing she can do as far as you're concerned. Did you ever vote, or have you voted Labour, or would you vote Labour, or have you never been?
When I was very young, but I've grown up since then.
Right. Okay.
But, her ideology won't allow her to change.
Right.
She's talking about Trump. You couldn't have two people more different, more opposite.
I do find it astonishing that you've got somebody who's sort of trying to sort of channel, somebody else's success. Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. The reason that there's Trump positivity is because Trump has said some things that people actually want to be done. Rachel Reeves, the only thing she said, OK, grow the economy. But then Liz Truss said grow the economy, and then she was booted out of office after 45 days.
Yeah, but, I'd go back long time before the election. They were crowing about what they were going to do to the non-doms.
Yes.
And they were going to tax them. It was going to pay for this. 45,000 extra appointments at night in the evenings for scans on the NHS, all paid for out of non-doms. Now, if you announce that, And you can't think forward. These people who are non-doms are very rich, most of them very clever. Those that are not employed people that are very clever, and think they're still going to sit there waiting for you to tax them to the hilt.
Exactly, and this
shouldn't be in government.
But this is the point, Norman, which I think we need a much better and greater education about tax and money in this country. And I'm well aware that sometimes when I've talked about it on shows that I present, people say, oh, you're only protecting, look what you write in the FT and, who you're representing and all this sort of stuff, and you're very privileged and you don't understand and you don't know. But I would say that I do understand, and I think I have a really clear view as to what a state is there to do and the difficulties of inequality between top and bottom. I don't like to see, vast differences, but I think we should be worried about what people are earning and people up and down the country have and the problems that they have. If somebody's got a huge amount of money, I want to persuade them to be in this country and to use that money and to use that wealth for the common good. I don't want to force them to do it, because if, as you correctly say, Norman, you put the tax rate too high, you get a bigger percentage, they're gone.
Well, this is exactly, see, they can't understand that a certain amount of wealth, but many of them through sheer hard work, and they invest it.
Sure.
And they invest it in people.
And if somebody invests, you expect to get a return, don't you?
Yeah, but you've got people now in government, all of them really, do not understand the private sector and earning profits at all. They've only ever worked for the civil service or charities, whatever. They've got no conception of having to work for a living. And I'll tell you something, I was a civil servant for 17 years. And I met, out of 47 years of work, some of the laziest people I've ever met in my life.
I hope you got a lovely pension out of it, Norman.
I'll tell you that, for nothing. All they were worrying about was their pension and not doing anything, so they didn't get blamed for anything.
You see, that's the other thing, is that when you work for an institution that works on a blame culture, as you say, nobody does anything, nobody takes risks, nobody is incentivized to come up with clever ideas, because you'll be targeted because of it.
Well, that's because there's no one driving it. You have to have a chap at the top whose money's in it, and he wants to know what happened. So when I was in it, we got
he or she,
privatised.
Norman, of course. But you're absolutely right. Skin in the game, as they call it. When I worked for private equity, in private equity, you used to get paid a base salary, which was a reasonable amount, but it wasn't huge. And all of your return was based on performance. So if you perform well,
right.
if you got the results, you get the reward. And if you don't, you don't.
Well, my grandson's in that.
Yeah, well, your grandson hopefully will be having plenty of money and plenty of rewards to look after you, Norman.
We ain't doing too sad so far. So.
Well, that's good. That's good news.
I'll give the boy credit there.
Excellent. Well, he's done well, and clearly he's got some of your nous, Norman.
Yeah. Thanks very much, John.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to chat. That's Norman in Dartford. So, do you agree with Norman? What would you say to Rachel Reeves? What do you think she needs to get done? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. And I know I haven't come to your text yet. I'll do that next on Talk.
government borrowing costs hit a 27-year high, and the pound is taking a pounding. Gloomy economic data is expected to show inflation and growth are off course.
Let me ask again, and can you please be clear, will Rachel Reeves be your Chancellor for the duration of this parliament?
Rachel Reeves is doing a fantastic job. She has my full confidence, and she has the full confidence of the entire party.
Can Rachel Reeves hold on as Chancellor?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
It's coming up to 10 minutes to 12 o'clock. It's me, James Max, with you until 1 o'clock here on Talk, where I've been somewhat inundated by all your messages and calls, which is very kind, so thank you very much indeed for those. I will come back to your calls in just a second. However, it would be remiss if we didn't pick up our Rachel Reeves conversation with this. Bill in Romsey says, does Reeves not understand that if, for example, Sainsbury's lose 3,000 jobs, the government's then going to be liable for redundancy payments, or certainly some of them, and then the government, then the people who lose their jobs will then claim unemployment benefits. She doesn't have a clue, says Bill. I think that's right. Kelvin says, James, good morning. I'll tell you what Rachel Reeves should do. She, along with the rest of this pack, should pack up their freebies and leave. I've summarised there. Can you... something off. Anyway, preferably they should all be sacked, stripped of their pensions, which we taxpayers pay. See how they like having their pensions taken away. They are destroying our country. This left-wing party is the cause of the state of our country, and I wouldn't trust them to run a bath, says Kelvin. Claire says, James, good morning. Nice to see you. Rachel Reeves is unfortunately not singing from the same song sheet as Trump. Whereas Trump embraces all of the people for the greater good of his country. Danny Kent says Britain didn't prosper in the 80s and 90s because of feeding trade unions. It was because of small and medium-sized businesses. You can't grow an economy by investing in public services. It has to be low tax to encourage outside investment. They had 14 years to prepare, says Jane. They're not up to the job. In any other business, they would be sacked. They should all resign, call an election, and let somebody else have a go. Tracy, Rachel Reeves needs to resign. Unfortunately, there isn't anybody who can replace her. They're all stupid and useless. Can you tell me what you really think, Tracy? Linda says, my husband had a stroke at 2 p.m. on Friday. He was blue lighted to a hospital, but wasn't seen until 9 a.m. on Monday, says Linda. My goodness me. I mean, with a stroke, you'd expect within half an hour, please. Barry says, good show. Thank you, Barry. Rachel from accounts needs to do what Trump is doing. Drill, baby, drill. Only two genders, male and female. Oof, I'm not sure that's going to help necessarily. I think that's just plain. But, stop illegal immigrants. Stop work from home. Shouldn't people have the choice? I mean, there are businesses I know where people do work from home. I mean, if it's run properly, it can be effective. Should they be able to work from home 5 days a week? No. But it's for the business to decide. Let business decide. They'll always decide the best thing. The only thing that Rachel Reeves can do is resign, says Michelle. Scott in Surrey says, nice to see you here back on Talk, James. Thank you, Scott. The real issue is that annoys and frustrates me is that successive governments are always pandering to minority groups, whether that be net zero, migration, trans rights. They just don't want us to support the majority view, which is what I thought was the essence of a democracy, says Scott. Meanwhile, let's go back to your calls. Jim is in Worcestershire. Jim, good morning.
James, good morning to you. I'm enjoying the programme very much.
Thank you, me too.
Yeah, she's not making tough decisions. She's making desperate decisions. And as the budget continues to take bite on the economy, she's going to make even more desperate decisions in future.
Does she not understand? I mean, surely, even with the most basic of economic understanding, even if you have a different ideology from the one that I subscribe to, surely, if you borrow too much money and you don't stimulate the economy for growth, then your debt is going to become more expensive. Surely she should understand that her measures were going to put up the cost of our nation's debt and take money out of her pockets.
Well, Trump has got the right idea. State develop, let companies develop, and produce taxation that way. But I don't know what she's trying to achieve. But
do you think she'll last the course? Do you think she'll last the course? Do you think she'll be there?
Well, yeah. Well, somebody said the other day they called her Rachel in the accounts to her face. You know, people are saying this about you, and she just tips it off and says, "Well, let them think what they want to think." You know, but they really don't care, do they?
But you see, what I find so extraordinary is that I think Rachel Reeves takes the view that criticising the last lot who are in for 14 years is in some way going to justify her stupid decisions. Whereas I think many of us are frustrated by the last 14 years, by the stupidity of the people who were in charge, and we're absolutely aghast that the people who have now become in charge are making even worse decisions than that bunch of cretins.
If you could switch back to 6 months or more and say, this is what you will get from the Labour Party, this is how the country will be run, most of the population in this country would run off screaming.
I think if we knew what we know now, amazingly, I think Rishi Sunak probably would still be in a parliament with a significantly reduced or perhaps minority government, and I think he would probably have quite a lot of people in there, and he would have had to change his tax slightly.
I think you're right. And just the thing on Starmer, his decision to not be concerned about the length of term that this guy will have in prison, the murder from my former hometown, Southport.
Yes.
It's disgraceful. He's a defensive lawyer, and he's more concerned about defending this guy in prison. Absolutely ridiculous. No mention of these children.
Well, I think even worse than that, Jim. I think he's more interested in defending the institutions that he seems to like to fund. And whether it's the ECHR or various other things, which I think provide the most appalling intervention in our systems. And also, he seems not to understand. He seems to be very keen to give 16-year-olds the vote, but on the other hand, doesn't want to hold 16 or 17-year-olds to account when they commit appalling atrocities.
Exactly. The guy that was on earlier on about the young school children being in knife crimes. Yeah, I agree with that. But also, most of the knife crimes in this country are not committed by youngsters, young children. They're committed by adults, and as long as we've got an idiot in London who won't do any of that knife crime in London, I'd hate to live in London, quite honestly.
Well, I've lived in London all my life, Jim, and it has its positives, but I have to say, if you're talking about London's mayor, I just stick the word night in front of it and just look forward to the day that he's voted out of office. He's an absolutely appalling abomination.
Well, the good thing about life, James, is he won't live forever.
In not very much time, Jim. I mean, look at me. I've been here for a couple of hours. Look at the devastation I'm leaving behind. Jim, thank you very much indeed for your call. We'll just squeeze one more call in before the news at midday. Matt is in Cheshire. Matt, good morning.
Hi, good morning, James. I'm just calling about Rachel Deceives.
Oh, yes.
Anybody that watching parliamentary debates, maybe since Brexit, would know that on any issue, that Labour had absolutely no policies and no ideas for the future of Britain. And
well, we know that if Labour had been in power, we would have probably been locked down for longer and in a more oppressive way. We know that if Labour had been in power, they never would have acceded or accepted that there was anything wrong with the European Union. We know that with Labour in power, they don't seem to think that there's any problem with either legal or illegal migration. They don't seem to be doing anything to stop the boats or actually care about it. They're just diverting our attention to other things, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, all they talked about more or less for a decade is cultural issues and things that they supported. Anybody that knew the calibre of potential cabinet members, a lot of which are in my area, knew that these people were inevitably going to be shocking. They're appalling in the constituencies and do nothing for the people in the area. What we've got is just mainly a Corbynite clique that all they've done for 14 years, or since Corbyn and Starmer were at the top level, is spitefully oppose and use contrary politics. They never have any substance in anything they do to oppose the Conservatives.
Is there anything that Rachel Reeves can do or say to redeem herself, or is she toast in your mind?
I mean, how can a Marxist sort of a party that's totally captured by Marxist ideology and identity politics help what's always been a capitalist country?
And do you think we need to get our capitalist spirit back again, Matt?
I know what's going to happen at the next election. It's inevitable. Labour won't be in power for a generation. British people learn quickly. They already know they've made a mistake. And I said to Peter Cardwell that Keir Starmer would be our Joe Biden.
I think you could very well be right, Matt. I think it could be a one parliament, and it's an expensive lesson for all of us that never again in our lives should we allow that to take place. Anyway, we're going to be turning our attention to the Ukraine war, taking more of your calls and your texts. That's all coming up on Talk.
I'm Cam Hall.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk. Fast talking, number crunching talk. James Max on Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. It's coming up to 3 minutes past midday this Saturday, the 25th of January. It's me, James Max. I am with you until 1 o'clock here on Talk, where we still have an awful lot to cover. We'll take some more calls on Rachel Reeves if you want to get involved in that conversation. After she made the comment in the papers that Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. And then she went on to say that she knew what needs to be done. Well, I don't think she does, so I'm asking you to perhaps give her some advice on what needs to be be done. Also, we will be turning our attention to the Ukraine war. We'll be speaking to Steve Gill to find out a little bit more about what Donald Trump is perhaps doing to stop that. We'll be turning our attention also to Keir Starmer. He has rejected a whole life term over Southport. He thinks that, or is hiding behind the UN despite pressure from peers and victims and families. And I'm going to be asking you, why are we selective when treating children like children? And why on earth are we even considering allowing children to have the vote at the age of 16 when we should perhaps leave it at 18? We'll be opening the phone lines to you on those topics. 0344 499 1000. If that wasn't enough, I want to know what the worst car in Britain is. I've got a list here of the least loved car, and I've also got a list which talks about the most loved car. Whichever cretins came up with this haven't got a clue. Well, we're talking motoring and getting your thoughts on that a little bit later. So if you want to tell me about your least loved car, the worst car in the whole of the United Kingdom, or maybe even the best car, you can do so. I'd like to hear from you, because whoever devised this list, not a clue. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. And if that wasn't enough, oh my God, I'm completely almost submerged under the number of texts. 87222 if you want to send me another one to try and bury me. At talkTV. Or you can send me a WhatsApp message. 0344 499 1000. So hello and good afternoon. Yes, it's lovely to be back. It's me, James Max, with you till 1. And, I think I mentioned that I'm back tomorrow. Ooh, yes, we've got a big show for you tomorrow. So, going to be live with you from 10 o'clock after David Bull. We'll have James Murray. He's the Secretary to the Treasury from the government, so we'll be talking to him about some of those economic policies. Plus, during the course of the show, we'll be speaking to Leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage. So, those are just a couple of the guests that we've got coming up on tomorrow's programme. We will, of course, be covering all the big stories of the day, going through the Sunday papers and taking your calls, your texts, your comments and emails and things. And, I talked about being buried. I've been buried under voice notes. But I can't get to them now. No. So, today, you might like to know, is the 47th birthday of Vladimir Zelensky. I know. The Ukrainian president, he's now been warning that his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, is aiming to manipulate Donald Trump after Putin praised the US leader and said he was ready for talks with him. But the question is, how on earth does this war in Ukraine end? Let's speak to Steve Gill, former advisor to Clinton and Bush administrations over in the US. Joins me now. Steve, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, James.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, look, we hear about these various different bits of sort of news either coming. I'm assuming that Vladimir Zelensky wants an end to this war as much as Vladimir Putin.
I'm not sure that that's accurate. Zelensky's the one that is continuing to ratchet things up with more aggressive fighting, demanding more money, demanding kind of a lifetime of funds coming from the U.S. And I think the difference is that Donald Trump is making it clear he is turning off the anytime teller machine for Zelensky. He's already issued an executive order that calls for an audit of the funds that have been provided to Ukraine, which will be interesting to see where the money's gone. And there's been a pause on this kind of foreign aid to anybody, not just Ukraine. When you control the checkbook, you control the resolution.
Okay, I understand that. Everybody, particularly from perhaps the US and everybody else wants it, but surely Donald Trump doesn't want to see any kind of end to a war that looks like a victory for Putin, does he?
I don't think so, but I think that what you have to look at is, do you continue the carnage, and how do you end that? You look at the Middle East, you look at the ceasefire. There's been a lot of damage, a lot of death, and Trump has really brought an end to that by getting the release of the hostages and a ceasefire. You've also had the Abraham Accords before that were moving Saudi Arabia towards a peace deal in the Middle East. I think we're going to continue to see that. So Trump is already having foreign policy effect before he even took office, and I think the same thing's going to happen as he starts the conversations with Zelensky and Putin.
So I guess what he seems to do very effectively is he uses money, he uses rhetoric, he uses arms, he uses trade as his tools, and everything is a deal to him. I'm assuming that he wants to seal the deal when it comes to dealing with some kind of peace, and presumably he'd be prepared to sacrifice some of Ukraine's territory in order to do that.
Well, I think at this point, the territory has been sacrificed, as Ukraine has been claiming. They're on the verge of victory. They're making gains, and they haven't made any significant territorial gains since the beginning of the conflict. I think that when you look at the territory that Russia has taken since this conflict began, the people there identify as Russian. They speak Russian. They have actually voted in referendums to join Russia. So I think it would be extremely difficult, not just politically, but militarily for Zelensky
you
to
say
take
that,
it back over.
but hang on a second. Ukraine has taken quite a significant chunk out of Russia as well. So there are negotiations to be had.
Well, the chunk that Ukraine took is a minor, like 0.06% of Russia, and it's literally in the middle of nowhere. And they've lost thousands and thousands of soldiers in that incursion into kind of the north.
Yeah, but
portion.
both sides have lost thousands and thousands of soldiers. I mean, frankly, nobody looks good out of any of this. And if one really wants to argue, the reason that all this happened is because we in the West didn't really take much notice when, in 2014, Vladimir Putin took his first bite out of Ukraine and went into, certain areas of the country because he thought no one was looking, and no one reacted. So he did it again. So I'm assuming that we haven't really learnt the lessons of history when it comes to it, and also we haven't necessarily looked at the weakness on Europe's eastern borders.
I think it's also interesting to listen to what, as you pointed out, Trump is saying how he's going to get Putin and Russia to the table by threatening sanctions. Russia's already the most sanctioned nation, I guess, in the history of the world. He's threatening tariffs on Russia. Apparently, his advisors are not advising him that Russia is already under sanctions and not really selling anything to the U.S. I don't know how you're going to sanction or tariff goods you're already not buying. And interestingly, Russia is actually providing space rocket engines to the U.S. Is he going to cut those off? The U.S. is already hitching a ride to get to the U.S. space station or to the International Space Station. So I'm not sure that those kind of economic reprisals on Russia will have the impact. I think that the oil industry, demanding that Saudi Arabia cut oil prices, that the U.S. increase our oil and gas production, that will have more economic impact on Russia and possibly bring about a negotiation rather than sanctions or tariff threats.
Let me ask you about the relationship between the UK and the US. The UK always likes to talk about the special relationship with the US. The US doesn't seem to either recognise or know that that's even a thing. When it comes to it, though, Donald Trump is no particular friend of either the Labour Party here in the UK or indeed of Keir Starmer, nor indeed of Peter Mandelson. Has the UK got any chance at all of getting any traction with the US until or unless this wretched government leaves us?
Well, I've told people for a long time that governments don't get along very well, but people do. And I think there is a special relationship between the British people and the American people. And that's going to salvage the relationship long term. Obviously, Labour has done everything they can to provoke Trump, both in the appointment of their expected ambassador, their foreign policy statements, and Starmer's attempt to send people to vote or help urge people to vote against Donald Trump. That does not make for a good relationship with the Labour Party. But I think, again, between the U.S. and the UK, we're still on a good front. I mean, just think about it, James. At least he's not encouraging us to make them Brits a state like Canada or buy it like Greenland. So we're much further ahead than
because he looks at our economy and he thinks it's too much of a basket case and he wouldn't want to touch it. That having been said, when you start to look at those relationships, I'm assuming that when it comes to Trump, that there are two things that perhaps, or maybe three things in our favour. Interesting that Boris Johnson, former Prime Minister, in the rotunda during the course of Donald Trump's inauguration. Nigel Farage, who is going to be on this very show, we hope tomorrow, certainly has an excellent relationship with Donald Trump. And indeed, maybe the royal family is one of the few ways in which we can ingratiate ourselves. I'm assuming that if the King invites Donald Trump over to the United Kingdom, that is our only way to build those relationships.
You know, Trump really relies very strongly on personal relationships with world leaders. That's one of the reasons that you saw the Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, at the inauguration and has had meetings with Trump, is talking with Trump. You've got Mayomi in Argentina. You've got these other world leaders that recognize personal relationships matter, even with Putin, even with Xi, even with Zelensky. And I think that those personal relationships with Johnson and certainly with Nigel Farage are something to build upon. I've joked that I don't think Nigel Farage in his wildest dreams ever includes Keir Starmer, but in his wildest dreams, he couldn't have imagined that Starmer and Labour would seem to be doing everything from a policy standpoint and from just an inept standpoint, are doing everything, it seems, to make him prime minister at some point.
Just finally to you, Steve, as we look ahead, in terms of the relationship with the US, is there a real chance that tariffs could be imposed on the UK from or by the US?
I don't think that's a very high priority at this point because, for the most part, US and UK trade relations are about on par. I think where Donald Trump is looking is where he can bring companies back to the US, where they've gone to Asia, to China, for example, to Mexico, to build goods and ship them into the U.S., where you have a big trade disparity. I think China is looking at about $1 trillion trade advantage over the U.S. at this point. With the U.S. and U.K., it's pretty fair, and I think that's what Trump looks at. And that's where he's going to look at these tariffs to either bring companies and jobs back to the U.S. Or to make sure that there's a balance in terms of the trade relationships between a country. And I think we're in good shape with the UK at this point. Now, there are other countries in Europe that still have a big disparity, and I think they should be concerned.
Absolutely, they should. Steve Gill, former advisor to the Clinton and Bush administrations in the US. Thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talk. It's much appreciated. Meanwhile, it's over to you. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Why are we selective when it comes to treating children like children? Front page of today's Daily Telegraph. Prime Minister rejects whole life term over Southport. This is Starmer hiding behind the UN, he says, or says the article. And I take a big issue with this, that when you're trying to advocate and say, oh, yes, we must have voting rights for 16-year-olds, which I don't agree with, by the way. I think that is an appalling impact and imposition on our democratic system, and incorrect. But then if you're asking for that kind of equality treatment, why on earth are you not arguing for whole life terms, particularly when we're talking about a crime such as the one in Southport? 0344 499 1000 on that. Meanwhile, back to your voice notes. Matt, what do you got to say?
Hi, James. It's Matt from Leeds. Rachel Reeves admitting that we need some more Trump positivity is basically an admittance of her poor management. The fact that she can see over the pond what's going so well, but her own party and her own student political views won't allow her to copy it and need a complete change and a complete change of government, because this country is constantly penalising those who work hard and taxing people who want to go out and make a better life for themselves.
Matt, thank you for that. Let's go to Jay. What have you got to say, Jay?
Morning, James. Great idea for Rachel Reeves. How about she comes into the morning sessions on Talk? Here's what the people want to say and listens to what she needs to do that way. Great idea. Great show. Bye.
Well, there we go, Jay. If only I had editorial control. Ring Rachel. That's what we'd do. We'd do a nice phone in and you could ring Rachel and ask her directly and ask your questions. I dare say that'll turn up on the dark side one day. Nicky, my ideas. Let's go to Peter. Peter, your voice note. What do you want to say?
Rachel Reeves and her cronies are ruining this country. Nigel is right. Every single problem in this country revolves around immigration. There's just too many people here and just too much money going abroad. Let's start looking after the British. Come on, Nigel, step up. Everybody, vote for Nigel. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Peter. Well, you may very well have your chance to speak to Nigel directly tomorrow on this very programme. We hope he's going to be joining us on Talk. Meanwhile, somebody who's sensibly called James. I wonder what have you got to say?
Good morning, James. Great show as always. Now, if I was the Chancellor, I'd stop all foreign aid for 90 days at least. I mean, for Christ's sake, we can't even give the pensioners their winter fuel allowance. I mean, that's an absolute joke, James. That's an absolute travesty. Hard-working pensioners getting their winter fuel taken away from them. I'm sorry, but that's disgusting. So much wastage in this country, James. Now, I'll tell you what, James, you could do a much better job than Rachel Reeves any day of the week. Thanks, James.
There we go. I wonder if James is trying to pack me off to the Treasury. Don't think he could pay me enough. Anyway, let's go to Moz. Moz, what do you got to say?
I'm Moz from Northamptonshire. Rachel Reeves needs to resign as she's done more damage to the economy than what Liz Truss did. And Liz Truss had less time. So maybe we should have gone with Liz Truss model instead of the model what Rachel Reeves has, as it's taxing everyone as hard as she can to try and make growth, but it's not working.
Well, it's interesting, Moz, that you raised that, because the thing is that Rachel Reeves has misunderstood the markets. The markets have actually treated her quite decently, and they haven't created the run that perhaps they should have done. But what they have done is they've made longer-term debt more expensive, and that means more money is coming out of the Treasury to pay the nation's debt and not go on the various things that Rachel Reeves thought they were going to go on. And that means that the black hole that she said was there has been made worse by her very actions. That's what I think. But what do you think? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. Tell Rachel Reeves what to do, if you like. What do you think she should do? Also, Prime Minister rejects whole life term over the Southport. What do you make of that comment by Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister? And I want to know about your least loved and most loved car. What is the best car that you've ever seen or used in the United Kingdom, and what's the worst? Because I've got a list here which we'll come on to a little bit later on, and their conclusions, they're all wrong. Of course they're wrong, because I didn't write it. 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. More of your calls are next here on Talk.
The UK government has absolutely blown it as far as I'm concerned, with Starmer and that. If we want to try and avoid these bruising tariffs and the multi-billion whisky, salmon, haggis and tweed industries, we can protect these industries, then our First Minister John Swinney should race out the traps and invite him and welcome this world-famous son of a Scottish immigrant to Scotland. We have no money, but we should play to his ego. We should celebrate his victory, not be bitter, twisted, insular and small-minded.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
23 minutes past midday. Hello, it's me, James Max, with you till 1 o'clock. All sorts still to talk to you about, and I promise we'll come back to your calls on not only Rachel Reeves telling her what you think she should do, but also with the Prime Minister rejecting whole life terms over Southport. Do you think he should change tack? Do you think that anybody of any age, if the crime is bad enough and appalling enough, that they should be able to receive a whole life term for certain acts? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. You can send me a text, 87222. Start your text with the word talk. You can follow me on X at the James Max, and also on Instagram as well, at the James Max. I might have sent something out this morning. There might be some pictures of some doggos out there. Have a look there. At the James Max or at talkTV, and the telephone number 0344 499 1000. Now, I did mention something just before, but I actually want your input here because I know that I am very, very, very prejudiced when it comes to this subject. Cars. Britain's least loved car, according to this article, is a £51,000 middle-class staple. Now, cars go right and they go wrong, and sometimes you can have, you know, your love-ins and love-outs with them. But whoever did this survey, they haven't got a blooming Scooby-Doo. It's the darling of the middle-class school run, so it says here. Endorsed by the likes of Victoria Beckham and Jamie Oliver, the Range Rover Evoque has fallen flat with Motus. It's named Britain's least loved vehicle in an official survey. Cost 51,000 quid. Introduced in 2020, spends on average 21 days a year off the road for repairs, according to research by Which. But then, Which goes on to say, Land Rover told Which is moved to logistics husband, blah, blah, blah. The company also claimed the survey was based on a sample size of 44 hybrid Evoque owners, equivalent to 0.2% of its customer base. 76% of all statistics are made up. Mark my words. And then it goes on to talk about this car. And hold on, let me bring in an expert. Jeremy Feeney is a motoring expert, joins me now. Jeremy, good afternoon. Hi, Jeremy.
Hello.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I'm good. Well, we're talking about Land Rover products, aren't we?
Well, yes. So, Jaguar Land Rover have told which has apparently voted in this survey that the Range Rover Evoque has fallen flat with Motus, named the least loved motoring vehicle. They say, the company says, that the survey is based on a sample size of 44 hybrid Evoque owners, equivalent to 0.2% of its customer base. So it sounds as if that this survey is a load of old nonsense.
They are. In fact, I have to say they are the particular Land Rover product, which is the thing I've had more experience with. I can tell you such a terrible horror story about a Defender, brand new. This is when they first came out, which I put out on lease to a customer of mine, a very good customer. The vehicle broke down. The loan vehicle broke down. The next vehicle they sent to him also broke down. It was actually a tale of misery. The dealers, their dealers are not up to coping with the problems. The vehicles are inherently unreliable and plagued with numerous problems with electronics. Unfortunately, they are an aspirational vehicle, which is what people want to own.
Well, I guess so. I guess so, and I understand all of that. And I have been the proud or otherwise owner of a Jaguar for quite a few years now, and I'm now on my second one. They did a big change in about 2021. They changed all their technology. I agree that the
problem with
Yeah, go ahead.
The problem with surveys, it's like the motoring journalists vote car of the year, or always used to vote car of the year. And if you look back at the vehicles that have come up car of the year, based on focus groups, based on surveys, invariably they are exactly, as you say, nonsense.
But this is so the car which they love the most.
The people they canvass are people who are dedicated lovers of the particular mark.
The car that they're
not getting an unbiased opinion of the product.
No, they're certainly not. Jeremy, I mean, the car that they love the most, the Lexus RX, I wouldn't have one of those if you paid me all the tea in China. Well, I might actually if you gave me all that money. But this is an awful, horrible, hateful car. It's boring, it's bland, it's plastic, it's dull. There's nothing to recommend a Lexus RX. Why on earth and how on earth have they allowed this survey to come up with that as the #1 car? It's rubbish.
Well, I think the problem, you see, the problem is that you tend to get, it almost becomes a bit tribal. You know, you get a sector who are dedicated to a particular mark. I agree with everything you say about the Lexus. It's a bland, very uninteresting product compared with something like a Range Rover, which is a superb vehicle in terms of its looks, the luxury that it affords, the performance and everything else. However, if you start comparing reliability, if you start looking at overall cost of ownership and depreciation, all the objective reasons for buying a vehicle, you would get a very different result in your survey.
You might do, but
at the end of the day, it's driven by emotion. It's driven by, you know, the appeal and the status that is afforded by a particular vehicle. I mean, you mentioned the Lexus. Even you know, the Lexus is considered an aspirational vehicle. Perhaps a Kia Sportage, which I would say is a better vehicle because it has a Kia badge on the front, is not.
Listen, I'm sure lots of people love Kia Sportages and all that sort of business. In the bin is where I would put those. I just find the design of them is just horrific. MGs, I don't know why anybody buys one of those. The seats are like sitting on marshmallow. The interior is plastic. The design is like somebody who just gave up on life. You have a look at BMWs, which I don't know. They seem to have forgotten how to design cars. Used to be absolutely wonderful, amazing, brilliant, and now you look at them and they get to the rear end of the car and you think, oh, this is knocked off home. They just couldn't be bothered to finish designing it. Whereas, and you look at something like Mercedes, beautifully designed, but then sadly, when it got to manufacture, all the bits fall off. So I just don't understand why people keep picking these cars that have either no soul, no wonder about them, and we should be you know, more objective about our choices.
Yes. You're absolutely right. I mean, one of the factors that I believe is never considered really is depreciation. Now, because I operate in the world of leasing and contract hire and so forth, and that part of the industry, you know, we're obsessed with depreciation and residual values and calculating this into cost of ownership. But that's the biggest expense any motorist will have if he's going to buy the vehicle new now and then in 3 years' time. You know, you should perhaps be choosing something that will not drop massively in value.
Okay, so regardless of cost of perhaps the beginning, where are you going to fare best when it comes to depreciation of a motor vehicle?
Sorry, I didn't hear that. You'll have to...
Where are you, regardless of cost, where are you going to fare best when it comes to depreciation? What choice should you make?
Sorry, I'm sorry. My sound is
no, but clearly technology not necessarily at the grasp, but at the forefront here. Regardless of cost, so we'll try 1/3 final time. Otherwise, I'm giving up. Right. Regardless of cost, where would your money be to avoid depreciation?
Where would my money be? What would I choose? I would probably choose a Kia Sportage.
Oh, but no!
That would be.
No, you've ruined it in the bin. What's wrong with you? Have you never driven a car?
You would choose a Lexus.
I wouldn't choose a Lexus.
No. You would choose a Lexus above a BMW or a Mercedes.
No, I wouldn't choose any of them. I'd choose an Aston Martin. I said, regardless of cost. I mean, what would you choose? Something which is stylish, something which has got some heart and soul. And you gave me a Kia Sportage.
If we're talking regardless of cost, yes. Well, I suppose probably a cabriolet, which narrows it down somewhat. And then if we're going in terms of irrespective of price, I would suspect probably a Bentley.
Oh, you see, now you're talking my language. A Bentley or a Porsche, regardless, and I do understand that, you know, for most people, for all of us, it's all out of. But this is the great thing about cars, is that we can fantasize about the sort of car. Would I like to have a Lamborghini? No. I'm 54 years old and should never be allowed to get in or out of one, which is why they make them so low. But would I, as you know, in my brain, would I love to have a Lamborghini? Sure, wonderful.
Well, don't you think that what you're now touching on, well, not you're indicating, of course, is the problem, that a lot of the vehicles on the wish list would be better staying on the wish list. And I think Range Rovers and other Land Rover products should stay on your wish list.
Just finally to you, Jeremy, before I let you go. So, Jaguar, of course, no longer making cars until they bring out their new cars. They went for their massive rebrand. Caused a big old hoo-ha.
First time since 1935 you can't buy a Jaguar in this country.
Exactly. So, when they bring out the new ones, do you think they've done a massive act of self-harm with their advertising, or do you think, hold your nerve, maybe they'll come up with something good?
I think the problem they're going to have when they come out with this vehicle, this pure electric, fabulous piece of engineering, is that the Chinese have got there first.
There we go, Jeremy Feeney, motoring expert. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and provoking me into some extraordinary discussions about Kia Sportage, really. Anyway, what is the best, what is the worst car that you can buy? And maybe just narrow it down. What's the best and worst cars you've owned? I mean, I think the worst car I ever owned was a Volvo 340. I didn't choose to have it. I think it chose to have me. It's a horrendous car. I mean, it's just, why... I don't even call it a car. It's just an embarrassment. Quickly followed, by the way, by a gold Fiat Panda with a massive rust spot. But what's your best, worst car? My car history's not looking good, is it? 0344 499 1000 is the telephone number. See if you can beat those recommendations. Plus, if you want to get involved in the conversation about either Rachel Reeves or indeed Keir Starmer or just anything else we've been discussing, you can do so. It's 0344 499 1000. More calls are next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
12:37 is the time. Very good afternoon. It's me, James Max, with you till 1 here on Talk. Going to be taking your calls between now and then. 0344 499 1000. Just to refresh your memory. Why are we selective when treating children like children is part of my question on the news that the Prime Minister has rejected whole life term over Southport. Why? Because when he committed that crime, the individual concerned, Axel Rudikabana, was 9 days short of his 18th birthday when he murdered 3 girls. I mean, seriously? Seriously? I just don't understand that, Prime Minister of ours, I'm afraid. Also, your least favourite car, your most favourite car. Talking about this, I mean, I know I went off on one, the Kia Sportage, and if you got one, well, maybe you want to put me right. But the Lexus RX, a full hybrid, discontinued a decade ago, named Britain's most loved car. No! For the bin! What's wrong with you? Anyway. And also, talking about Rachel Reeves. What does she need to do? She says she knows what she's doing. I don't think she's got Scooby-Doo. So, what does she need to do? 0344 499 1000. Robert is in Hertfordshire. Hello, Robert.
Good afternoon. I'm a first-time caller, James, on your programme.
Well, thank you, Robert.
I want to change the conversation back to the Southport killer, but before I do,
yes,
we've got a Toyota Aygo, a little Aygo. They're nice.
Is that an Aygo or an Igo?
I go, you go. Anyway,
they go. Does it go in the bin?
AYGO, isn't it? AYGO.
Yes. I mean, I remember when Top Gear used that for a game of football. That was a very good use for it.
All right. You're getting a bit personal.
I'm just throwing it out there, Robert. Are you happy with your Toyota Aygo?
Well, I'll tell you, look, I'm a pensioner. Me and my wife, we're 72. I don't think it'll be long before we get our licenses taken away from us anyway. Because we're going to be forced to take the driving test again, which is not a bad thing. But this is what I don't like about it. The fact is, are the government going to lay on extra buses then? Because we'll be waiting in the rain once we haven't got a car anymore.
You see, I think it's a really important point to make sure that no matter what your age, if you are able to get out the house, if you're going to stop people driving or whatever it may be, you've got to provide proper transport. You've got to be able to get around, haven't you, Robert?
Well, that's just before they take you. There's whispering in the winds that they want to take the bus passes away from pensioners. I've already lost my heating allowance.
Yes.
I mean, going back, for the last 6 months, it's just been nothing but depression. I'm just in the middle of starting a petition off. I've just been looking, and my petition will be for the immediate resignation of Keir Starmer based on the Southport incident. And I'll tell you for why. Because he deliberately misled the public. On the night when that monster was arrested, his house was obviously spun over, and they could see that there was evidence of some sort of terrorist, at the time. Now, that went straight back to the top. I'll tell you now, that night, Keir Starmer knew all about it. And yet, I think that the misinformation caused the riots. I think what they should do now is dissolve Parliament straight away. So I'm in the middle.
But Robert, I understand what you're saying. I think the chances of that happening are limited. I do think that one of the big mistakes that the government made at that time of that horrific attack is the amount of information that they gave out. And I think the misinformation, if you like, that was allowed to be spread then fueled many of the issues. But also, I think what we're finding out now about the multiple failings of various different organisations, that here was somebody that people knew were carrying knives. I mean, God only knows what the parents were doing and not looking through what was in that kid's bedroom. I mean, there are so many aspects to this that just rings just horrific.
Well, they should be deported straight away. I mean, I don't accept that the dad stopped the kid from going to the school previously. No, look, I'm a parent. We're a lot of parents. My kids now are in their 40s, but you've got to be responsible for your children.
I think you do, and I think this comes down to this point that if, for example, the Prime Minister is rejecting a whole life term over Southport, then parents are responsible. And if you're saying that they're an adult, then they should receive the full sentence. I don't see how you can argue both. Robert, thank you for that. Let's go to Michelle, who's in London. Michelle, good morning. Afternoon.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm glad to see you back.
Me too.
Just to point this out, I've had to change my hairstyle because it was like Rachel Reeves. I've had short back and sides.
Oh, you had a Rachel, did you? I mean, what do we call that?
For 10 years, and she's just destroyed it.
Oh dear. I mean, I never really thought about the consequences of that, or indeed, because I mean, I know that.
Loved it.
I know that if you're called Karen and you have a Karen hairdo, you've had to have it redone. So now, I mean, what do you call the Rachel?
No, she's killed the Bob. I was always called a Sharon or a Tracy, but when someone went to me, you look like Rachel Reeves, I was straight round and I said to her, can I have short back and sides?
Why did people bother calling you a Sharon or a Tracy when you called her Michelle? I mean...
Oh, no, it's because of my accent, that's why.
Oh.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, my point stands, Michelle.
I know.
Are you a Michelle with 2 L's?
My name is Michella, but it's Michelle with 2 L's, but it has to have like apostrophe on one of the E's.
Oh, you're Michella. Oh, how very exotic.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. My mum did, but my mum thought I'll end up in France, so she didn't want me to be a Michael, because that's what they call him, isn't it? So she made it like it.
So what happened to your dream of going to live in France, Michella, whatever?
Oh, do you know what? It's my dad was in the war and he didn't approve of it.
Oh. So that put the end of that. Okay.
Yeah, but I love French food and perfume and champagne. But honestly,
listen to you. What a loose lifestyle. I want a bit of that, Michelle. Oh, that sounds fantastic.
I know. I've got ill and a lot of things changed, and like you just got to like go with the flow.
How often are you quaffing down the old champagne then?
Only once a year.
Oh. So you're not like Gordon Brown, who kept a fridge of champagne. That's the only thing he drank.
Oh, no, you're joking. The only thing my fridge is full of is tonic water, because I need the thing in it, you know.
The quinine. Quinine?
Yeah, the quinine, because otherwise that'll be another tablet.
Oh.
But, what is going on? Donald Trump is a breath of fresh air.
Right.
But what is wrong with us? What is wrong?
Well, Reeves has identified that and says Britain needs a dose of Trump positivity. But I don't know what's wrong with her that makes her realise that one of the reasons that Donald Trump is the breath of fresh air is that he says he's going to do something and then he does it. She says she's going to do something, and then she does something completely different. I'm going to grow the economy. Fantastic. Full support. And then she goes and sticks at everybody's tax, makes borrowing more expensive, crashes the economy, makes company far-starved, puts up costs of employing people. So she's not going to get any Trump positivity if she does politics like that.
But, James, you've got to put your country forward. But what's annoyed me, she's did this because I was taken away from my heating allowance and I've gone through cancer for 6 years. But that's irrelevant. Everybody out there has got a story.
Sure.
And it's all sad. But what I don't get is why he's not... I'm sorry, but I'm just going to have to say this. I wish his bits were bigger than his glasses and get some gumption. It's so it doesn't make sense. And
are we talking about the Prime Minister here?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So you'd like him to have to coin a phrase, some cojones?
Yeah. If they were bigger than his glasses, I could have a bit more I can listen to you. But it's all...
I'd just like to have a bit more in his brain.
Yeah. But that doesn't seem to be the point here. It's all self-service on the thing. But we've got to stop. You're cutting everything, but he's not saying anything about keeping people in, illegal immigrants, people who evaded our shores, in hotels. But he's persecuting us.
But he has said, here's the thing though, he has said we have to stop the boats and that we're going to do it by tackling the gangs. He has said that we've got to get a grip on migration, which the previous lot didn't do. There are various things that he said, but the problem is that the action or the policy isn't there.
But why?
Why? Because he hasn't either thought of the policies that are going to work or his team aren't up to it. I don't know.
Oh, James, before you get on this station, you read up and you can answer any question that's thrown at you. You read up.
I do.
You're an educated man. But it seems like our government is just... And I'm not being rude when I say this, but this is my saying. I do think people are on drugs because we need an excuse, because you've got to be on something to not, like, face reality. It's freaking me out.
Well, I think it's freaking us all out, from Michelle McKenna. I don't know. Just before I let you go, so how would you like me to say your name? Is it Michella?
Oh, just call me Michelle. I mean, like, I went one of my neighbours' phone, just knocking on the door, and she was like, Shell. I went, yeah, 30 years ago, but not now.
No, well, Michelle it is, and probably they're popping round to...
thank you. You've got a lovely voice.
Well, thank you, Michelle. That's very kind, and you're very lovely to call in. And it's lovely to chat, and I will be back with you, of course, tomorrow. So if you want to call in tomorrow, you can do so. So we'll see if we can squeeze in a few more calls between now and 1 o'clock. It's 0344 499 1000 to have your say. It's me, James Max, with you. Till then.
The UK government has absolutely blown it as far as I'm concerned, the standard and that. If we want to try and avoid these bruising tariffs and the multi-billion whisky, salmon, haggis and tweed industries, we had to protect these industries, then our First Minister John Swinney should race out the traps and invite him and welcome this world-famous son of a Scottish immigrant to Scotland. We have no money, but we should play to his ego. We should celebrate his victory, not be bitter, twisted, insular and small-minded.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, it's me, James Max, with you till 1 o'clock here on Talk. All sorts of things still to talk to you about. And I'm really remiss. I've tried to do as many of the voice messages and the talk messages and the comments and things. So just a couple of your comments coming in, and I'm sorry if I haven't got to yours today, but the good news is that I will be back tomorrow from 10. So you can try again. We've had a lot of calls and a lot of things. Anyway, Stephen Somerset says, I'm 73. I've not been this excited about politics since the 1970s and the Thatcher years. Reform is the subject of discussion on the building site I work on, like nothing else for the intervening years. James, the law doesn't need to be changed. It's just a smokescreen. Starmer could have requested that he was tried as an adult. as he was 9 days from 18, not 12. Wasn't Keir Starmer involved in this? No. James, the car I loved having the best was the Rover 75. Classy, Jag-looking, luxurious car, and I loved it, says Terence. Which is by a Jag. I mean, you can get... I bought a Jag for £3,000. It wasn't a Jag. It was a Jag. Oh, so nice. It was a one-gentleman owner. It had done 70,000 miles. I think it was a 1990... No, it's 2003. 2003. Oh, it was lovely. Oh, what a wonderful car that was. Anyway, Jag, £3,000. I sold it for 4.5 as well. John says, I had a Range Rover Evoque. Best car I've ever owned. After 3 years, not a day's trouble. I'll never sell it. And this is off the back of the news, by the way, which have done a survey where they've come up with the worst car, which they say is a Land Rover Jaguar Evoque, Range Rover Evoque. And they say the best one is a Lexus RX. I'm sure you could do better than that. Richard says, James, I've owned a Jaguar XJS for 15 years. It's one of the most reliable cars I've ever owned, says Ricky in Yorks. Oh, a Jaguar XJS, yes, please. Nice. I pulled my Vauxhall van to Portugal with my own Evoque on an A-frame. The Evoque pulled it out with an absolute ease, says John. The Lexus RX will give you 200,000 miles plus reliability. LR is always in the shop. I've owned both, says Steve. Best car, in my opinion, is a BMW Z4. Oh, I like the Z4, Justin. Nice. Colin says, I drive a Mercedes Class AMG. Fantastic car. Best out of all the road. It makes... best out of all the over, it makes it owned. What's that? Is that the noise it makes? AMG, lovely. Justin says, if money was no option, I'd have a Bugatti Atlantic. I think we all would. A complaint about your noise levels. I think we've sorted out the YouTube, so apologies for that. Glyn says, I wish we could have Ian on the phone defending the diabolical government. No, I think Ian's gone to ground. That's an early breakfast reference there. He used to call in regularly. Michelle is brilliant, says Sonia. And Claire Muldoon is a do-gooder. Well, she was on the last show. I can't help with that. Anyway, let's go back to your calls. Colin is in Norwich. Hello, Colin.
Hi there, James. First-time caller to your brilliant show.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Colin. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel as if I'm a bit of a novice at all of this, but No.
I heard you. I was under the shower, but I heard your comments about an hour ago about Badenoch.
Oh yes.
But you didn't really expand on it, and about her appalling performance.
I just thought so.
Performances in Question Time.
Okay, so I went to Prime Minister's Question Time on Wednesday at the House of Parliament, and I was expecting for some, good feisty response. And with a Prime Minister and a government with so much to have a go at, I would expect the Leader of the Opposition to really go hammer and tongs, and she didn't. She went off on a obscure... discussion about an educational bill. Yes, it might be important, but really, was that the place to do it?
Well, I mean, I just wondered, could she not give way to somebody? I mean, has it got to be the opposition leader of the opposition?
Well, I know that leaders of other parties, so Ed Davey, as a result of the number of MPs that the Lib Dems have, gets a question or two every week. And I know that the Reform Party, because of their 5 MPs, get a question, I think, every 2 or 3 weeks. But frankly, I think that the system is somewhat antiquated. And I also think that holding the Prime Minister to account to actually answer any of the questions that they're asked, I think it's pretty poor.
Well, there is a precedent because, I mean, I don't obviously you noticed, but, the reply to the budget was done, it's usually done by the Deputy Chancellor, but it was Sunak that did it.
Yes, but it's always the Leader of the Opposition who replies to the Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Oh, I do beg your pardon. I was under the... Well, I know...
No.
Balls used to reply.
And that was actually, to be fair to Rishi Sunak, that was one of his best performances.
Where it was in the election, God knows.
I don't know. I just don't understand because, we had this conversation earlier, Colin, that if we knew what we know now about this government and what they've done, regardless of reforms rise and all that sort of business, would Rishi Sunak still be the Prime Minister? I think he possibly would be.
Oh, yes, with a few more speeches like that, it was a real hair bristler, wasn't it?
Well, it just demonstrated an understanding and a mastery of his subject that, for all the criticism of him not dealing with boats, not dealing with what he was supposed to deal with and being maybe uncharismatic, the fact is that he really understood economics, the economy, business and what needed to go. I think part of the problem, though, for Rishi Sunak is that he and his Chancellor made the wrong choices about the taxes that they should cut.
Yes. Well, I just wondered if she could throw a sickie or something.
Well, if it could be a permanent one, that would be ideal. Colin, lovely to chat. Thank you for calling. Just moving on so I can get in one more call before we come to an end today. Roger is in, where are you? Denbighshire. Roger, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
What can you tell me?
Well, for one thing, Trump has pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord.
He has. Should Rachel Reeves do the same thing for us?
Yes. No.
Oh, imagine the pigeons and the cat amongst them. Oh.
I think they'd all have paroxysms of heart attacks in the Labour Party if they did that.
Oh, they'd be beside themselves. I love the fact that they're all tearing themselves to pieces over, oh, yes, let's have a third runway at Heathrow, combined with the fact that all the people who voted against